A single whispered word. That's all it took to shatter a billionaire's empire before it was even built. When Mara Ellis saw the formula on that tablet, every cell in her body screamed one truth: sign that deal and people die. But who listens to a waitress in a city that worships money? Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this journey travels. The Carlisle wasn't just expensive. It was the kind of place that made expensive look cheap. Ethan Vale sat at table 17, the corner booth with the view that cost extra, even though the entire restaurant was already bleeding your wallet dry. His suit probably cost more than most people's cars. The watch on his wrist could have fed a family for a year. But none of that mattered right now. What mattered was the tablet in front of him, the signatures already loading on the screen, and the $100 million medical acquisition that would cement his legacy as something more than just another tech billionaire with too much money and not enough purpose. His daughter's face flashed through his mind. Lily, 6 years old, the reason he was even sitting here. Mr. Vale, if you'll just review page 47 one more time. Dr. Adrian Sloan sat across from him, all polished confidence and silver hair. The man looked like he'd been designed in a lab specifically to inspire trust. The clinical trial results are extraordinary. We're looking at a complete paradigm shift in pediatric cancer treatment. Ethan scrolled through the data. Numbers that should have made him feel something. Hope, maybe. Relief. His company, Valecore Industries, had the infrastructure to bring this drug to market within 18 months. Lily wouldn't benefit. Her leukemia was in remission, thank God or luck or whatever was listening. But thousands of other kids could. The efficacy rates are impressive, Ethan said. His voice had that flat quality it always got during negotiations. People mistook it for coldness. It wasn't. It was control. But the metabolic pathway here, this cascade starting on page 19, chike, is well within established parameters, Sloan finished smoothly. Mr. Vale, I understand your caution, but every day we delay is another day children are suffering. Your team has already vetted the research. My company has invested 7 years into this. We're ready. Across the restaurant, Mara Ellis refilled a coffee cup and wished she was invisible. She'd gotten good at it over the years. Being invisible, moving through spaces without disturbing them. The Carlisle had hired her 6 months ago, and she'd perfected the art of existing without being seen. Gray dress, hair pulled back, eyes down. Never make eye contact with the customers. Never speak unless spoken to. Certainly never, ever let them know that the woman pouring their overpriced coffee used to have 3 degrees and a research lab with her name on the door. That was a different life, a different Mara. This one just needed to make rent. More water, table 9, Carlos hissed at her from the kitchen doors. And smile, for Christ's sake, you look like you're at a funeral. Maybe she was. The funeral had just been happening in slow motion for 3 years. She grabbed the pitcher and made her way across the dining room. The lunch crowd was thinning out, just the serious business people left. The ones who spent 3 hours over a meal because time was something they owned, not something that owned them. Table 17. The corner booth. She'd been trying to avoid it. Not because of the billionaire, she barely registered rich people anymore. They all blurred together. But because of the other man. The one with the silver hair and the smile that looked like it had been purchased alongside the suit. Dr. Adrian Sloan. Mara's hands had started shaking the moment she'd seen him walk in. She ducked into the kitchen, pretended there was an emergency with Table 4's order, anything to avoid being near him. But Carlos had noticed, and Carlos didn't tolerate prima donnas. And now here she was, water pitcher in hand, approaching the table where the man who'd destroyed her life was about to close a deal. Gentlemen, can I refresh your water? Her voice came out steady. Small miracle. Sloan didn't even glance at her. Why would he? She was furniture, decoration. Certainly not Dr. Mara Ellis, the researcher whose work he'd stolen and buried 3 years ago. But Ethan Vale looked up, actually looked at her, which was unsettling enough. Most of them looked through you. I'm fine, thank you, he said. Polite, distracted. His attention was already back on the tablet, and that's when Mara saw it. The screen was tilted just enough. The formula diagram in the corner of page 19, the molecular structure that Sloan had just brushed past, the cascade pathway that... Oh God, no. The water pitcher nearly slipped from her hands. She caught it, but not before water sloshed onto the white tablecloth. Professional disaster. Carlos would kill her. I'm so sorry. Let me... She grabbed a napkin, but she wasn't seeing the spill. She was seeing the formula. The same one. The exact same structure she'd flagged in her research 3 years ago. The cascade that looked safe on paper, looked brilliant on paper, but turned toxic in living tissue after repeated doses. She'd written 17 pages on why it wouldn't work, why it couldn't work. And Sloan had taken that research, stripped her name off it, buried her warnings, and was apparently about to sell it for $100 million. It's fine, Ethan's voice cut through her panic. Really, not a problem. But Mara couldn't move. Her eyes were locked on that formula, on the ticking time bomb hidden inside the miracle cure. Miss? Ethan was looking at her now, actually looking, with something that might have been concern. Are you all right? No. No, she wasn't all right. She was watching a deal that would kill children, and the only person in this room who knew it was a waitress, nobody would believe. Do nothing. Walk away. It's not your problem anymore. That's what the smart part of her brain said, the part that had learned painful lessons about speaking up, about challenging powerful men, about what happened when you thought truth mattered more than politics. But there was another part, smaller, stupider, the part that had spent 6 years in medical research because she actually gave a damn about saving lives. Lily's face flashed through Ethan's mind again as he watched the waitress. Something was wrong. She'd gone pale, and her eyes were fixed on his tablet with an intensity that seemed wildly out of place for someone who'd just spilled water. I'm fine, she said, but her voice shook. Excuse me. She turned to leave. Don't sign it. The words came out barely above a whisper. So quiet, Ethan almost thought he'd imagined them. He definitely didn't imagine the way Sloane's entire body went rigid. I'm sorry, Ethan said. The waitress, Mara, according to her name tag, had frozen mid-step. Her back was to them, shoulders tight, like she was bracing for impact. I said... She turned around. Her face was dead white, but her jaw was set. Don't sign that contract. The formula is wrong. Silence dropped over the table like a guillotine blade. Excuse me? Sloane's voice had gone very, very cold. Who the hell do you think you... The metabolic cascade on a page 19. Mara was speaking faster now, the words tumbling out like she knew she only had seconds before someone shut her up. The tertiary binding site. It looks stable in vitro, but in living tissue, after the 4th or 5th dose, it crosses the blood-brain barrier and... Security! Sloane was on his feet. We need security now. This woman is clearly... Wait. Ethan held up a hand. His voice was quiet, but something in it made Sloane stop mid-sentence. Let her finish. Mr. Vale, this is obviously some kind of corporate espionage. I said let her finish. Mara's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. This was insane. This was career suicide. Hell, this was probably actual suicide. Sloane had lawyers who ate people like her for breakfast, but those kids wouldn't know to be afraid until it was too late. The compound metabolizes differently in pediatric patients, she said. Her voice was steadier now. The enzyme markers you're using as indicators, they're accurate for adult tissue, but in children under 12, there's a genetic variation in approximately 40% of the population. The drug accumulates. By the 6th dose, you're looking at neurological damage. By the 8th, seizures. And the cascade is irreversible because the binding is covalent, and that is absolutely false. Sloane's face had gone red. Mr. Vale, I don't know who put this woman up to this, but these accusations are not only baseless, they're libelous. We have 7 years of research. I know, Mara said. I did 3 of those years. And there it was. The bomb dropped. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Explain that. Mr. Vale, I strongly advise you not to listen to... Dr. Sloane, shut up. Ethan hadn't raised his voice, but Sloane went quiet like he'd been slapped. You, waitress, explain. Mara felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. Jump, and everything changes. Everything breaks. But staying meant watching children die, and she'd already sold too many pieces of her soul. She didn't have that one left to sell. My name is Dr. Mara Ellis, she said. 3 years ago, I was the lead researcher on Project Helix at BioSure Solutions. That formula you're looking at? I developed the initial structure, and I wrote a full report on why it was too dangerous to move forward. The color had drained from Sloane's face. That report was classified, he said. His voice had gone very quiet. How would a waitress— Because I wrote it, Mara's voice cracked. I spent 18 months on that research. I found the flaw. I documented everything. And you— She turned to face him fully now, and 3 years of silence came pouring out. You buried it. You stripped my name off the research, fired me, blacklisted me from every lab in the country, and apparently decided to sell my work anyway after removing the inconvenient parts about it being lethal. This is slander, Sloane said, but his voice lacked conviction. You signed an NDA. You have no proof. The binding site sequence, Mara said. She was looking at Ethan now, ignoring Sloane completely. Run a spectroscopy analysis on the tertiary structure. Check the metabolic pathway in tissue samples from pediatric donors. You'll see the accumulation. It takes about 72 hours to show up in testing, which is why it didn't flag in your preliminary screens. But it's there. Ethan was very, very still. His finger hovered over the signature line on his tablet. Lily's laugh echoed in his memory. The sound she'd made last week when he'd finally been home in time to read her a bedtime story. The way she'd looked at him with absolute trust, like daddies could fix anything, protect anyone. Mr. Vale. Sloane had composed himself. The red had faded from his face, replaced by the smooth confidence of someone used to talking his way out of corners. I understand this is alarming, but this woman is clearly disturbed. She was let go from BioSure for cause, erratic behavior, unfounded accusations, failure to meet research standards. This is obviously a vendetta. Is it true? Ethan's voice cut through the explanation like a knife. The binding site issue. Is it true? Of course not. I'm not asking what you think I want to hear. I'm asking if there's any possibility, any chance at all, that what she's saying is correct. Sloane opened his mouth, closed it. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Not quite guilt, not quite fear. Something in between. That second was enough. Ethan set down his tablet, unsigned. We're done here. Mr. Vale, please. I said we're done. Ethan stood. He was tall, Mara realized. She'd been too panicked to notice before, but the man had presence. I'm not signing anything until this is investigated properly. My team will run independent verification on everything she just said. If it checks out— He turned to look at Sloane and his eyes had gone flat and cold. If any of this checks out, you'd better hope you have very good lawyers. This is a massive overreaction to the ravings of a disgruntled— Get out! Sloane went silent. For a long moment he just stood there, and Mara could see him calculating, weighing options, deciding how much power he had in this room. Not enough, apparently. You're making a mistake, he said finally. Those children need this drug. Then the drug better be safe. Ethan's voice was ice. Get out. Sloane grabbed his briefcase. He didn't look at Mara as he left, but she could feel the hatred radiating off him like heat. The message was clear. This isn't over. And then they were alone. Ethan and Mara, Billionaire and Waitress. The silence stretched out between them. You just destroyed your life, Ethan said finally. You know that, right? Mara laughed. It came out broken. Yeah, I got that. He'll sue you into the ground. Even if you're right, the legal fees alone. I know. She was shaking again. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving just the cold reality of what she'd done. I know, but I couldn't. Those kids— Sit down. I should go. I'm fired anyway, and Carlos is probably having a stroke. Sit down. It wasn't a request. Mara sat. Ethan was studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. She'd seen photos of him before, obviously. You didn't live in New York without knowing who Ethan Vale was, but up close, he was different, sharper. There were lines around his eyes that the magazine photos airbrushed out, and something in those eyes themselves, a kind of exhaustion that money couldn't fix. Tell me everything, he said, from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. So she did. It poured out of her. 3 years of silence, broken. She told him about BioSure, about the initial excitement of Project Helix, the promise of a breakthrough, the way the early results had looked so good, so hopeful. And then the moment she'd run the extended timeline simulations and seen the accumulation pattern, the way the compound bound to neural tissue, the slow, creeping toxicity that wouldn't show up until it was too late to reverse. She told him about the report she'd written, 17 pages, meticulously documented, about the meeting with Sloan where she'd presented her findings, expecting concern, expecting them to halt the trials until they could redesign the compound. Instead, he'd thanked her for her thoroughness, told her they'd look into it, and 2 days later she'd been escorted out of the building by security. Her credentials revoked, her research seized, and within a week every lab she applied to had the same response. We've decided to go in a different direction. She'd burned through her savings in 6 months, moved to a smaller apartment, then a smaller one, applied for jobs she was wildly overqualified for and got rejected anyway because her employment gap raised questions and her references from BioSure were mysteriously unavailable. The Carlyle had been desperate enough to hire her. Barely. "And you've been working here for 6 months, Ethan said when she finished, knowing he was still out there, selling your research." "I didn't know he was selling it. I hoped, maybe he'd actually buried it, that he'd realized I was right and just didn't want to admit it." "But you knew better." "Yeah." Mara's laugh was bitter. "I knew better." Ethan was quiet for a long time. His fingers drummed on the table, the only sign that he wasn't as calm as he looked. "You said you can prove it," he said finally. "The metabolic pathway, the accumulation. You said I could test it." "Yes. It'll take 72 hours minimum with proper tissue samples, longer if you want to run the full cascade simulation. But it's there. I can show you exactly where to look." "Why should I believe you?" The question wasn't hostile, just direct. Mara appreciated that, in a weird way. "You shouldn't," she said. "I'm nobody. A waitress with an axe to grind against a respected researcher. Every rational reason says you should ignore me and sign the deal. But if I'm right and you sign that deal and that drug goes to market, kids will die. Not immediately. Not obviously. It'll look like complications, adverse reactions. By the time anyone connects it to the drug, hundreds of children will have irreversible brain damage. And if you're wrong," Mara met his eyes, "then I've wasted your time and ruined what's left of my reputation. But I'm not wrong. I've run these numbers 1,000 times in my head. I know that formula like I know my own name, and I'm telling you, it's broken." Another silence. Ethan's phone buzzed. He ignored it. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "Lily, she's 6. She had leukemia." Mara's breath caught. "Had?" "Remission, 8 months now. But the clinical trial she was in, the drug that saved her life. Do you know how many times I read the research data? How many nights I spent cross-checking trial results, looking for any sign that it might not work, that it might hurt her instead of helping?" "I can imagine." "No, you can't." His voice was hard. "You can imagine being scared, but you can't imagine what it's like to be the one who has to decide. To look at your child and know that whatever choice you make might be the one that kills them." Mara said nothing. What could she say? "So yeah," Ethan continued, "I'm going to test your claims. Not because I trust you. I don't know you from anyone. But because if there's even a 1% chance you're right, I can't live with being the person who put that drug in some other father's daughter." Relief hit Mara so hard she nearly sobbed. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If you're wrong, if this is some elaborate con or revenge plot, I will destroy you so thoroughly you'll wish Sloan had finished the job. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." Ethan pulled out his phone, started typing rapidly. "I'm calling my head of research, Dr. Sarah Chen. She's in Boston, but she can be here by tonight. You're going to explain everything to her, every detail, every test you want her to run. And when she finds something, we're going to need your original research notes." "I don't have them. Sloan took everything." Everything? No backup drives, no emails to yourself?" Mara hesitated. "I might have sent some preliminary data to my personal email before I knew what was happening. But if Sloan finds out I kept copies, he's not going to find out. Not yet." Ethan was all business now. "Give me your phone." "What?" "Your phone. Now." She handed it over, confused. He did something with it, she couldn't see what, and handed it back. "That's my personal number," he said. You don't talk to anyone else about this. Not friends, not family, definitely not the media. If Sloan contacts you, you document it and you call me. If anyone threatens you, you call me. If you so much as get a parking ticket, you call me. Got it? I don't understand. Why would you? Because in about 2 hours, Sloan is going to realize what just happened, and he's going to come after you with everything he has. And you're going to need someone with bigger lawyers. The reality of that settled over Mara like a weight. She'd been so focused on stopping the deal, she hadn't thought past it, hadn't considered what Sloan would do when the shock wore off. I can't afford a lawyer, she said quietly. You're not paying. I am. Mr. Vale? Ethan, and this isn't charity. If you're right, you just saved my company from the biggest lawsuit in pharmaceutical history. If you're wrong, well, we'll deal with that when we get there. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it, and something in his expression shifted. I have to go. Lily's school called, some kind of emergency. Probably nothing, but go, Mara said. Of course, go. He was already standing, grabbing his coat. Sarah will call you in an hour. Answer. Tell her everything. I will. He paused at the table's edge, turned back. One more thing. That report you wrote. The one Sloan buried. Do you remember the conclusion? Word for word. What was it? Mara closed her eyes, pulled up the memory. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. The observed metabolic cascade, while promising in controlled adult trials, presents an unacceptable risk profile in pediatric populations. Until the tertiary binding mechanism can be redesigned to prevent neural accumulation, I cannot in good conscience recommend advancement to phase 3 trials. The potential for harm outweighs the therapeutic benefit. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was watching her with something that might have been respect. You really did write that. I really did. Then let's prove it. And then he was gone, moving through the restaurant like a man used to people getting out of his way. Which, Mara supposed, they were. She sat alone at table 17, staring at the water she'd spilled. It had soaked into the tablecloth, spreading in slow, creeping patterns. Kind of like poison, she thought, slow and creeping, and by the time you see it, too late. Her hands were still shaking. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Carlos was suddenly there, face purple with rage. Do you have any idea who that was? Do you have any concept of how much money you just... I'm fired, Mara said. I know. I'll clean out my locker. Fired. Fired. You're lucky if fired is all you... Carlos. Her voice came out flat. Empty. I know. I'll be gone in 5 minutes. Maybe he heard something in her tone. Maybe he just realized he'd already won. Either way, he stomped off, muttering about lawsuits and incompetence and how he'd always known she was trouble. Mara pulled off her apron, folded it neatly, set it on the table next to the water stain. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Dr. Ellis? This is Sarah Chen. Ethan asked me to call. I'm on the next flight to New York, and I need you to explain everything you know about Project Helix. Mara took a breath. And then another. And then she started talking. Outside, the Manhattan afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything gold. It should have been beautiful. Should have felt like a new beginning, like justice, like something good. Instead, Mara just felt tired and scared and absolutely certain that she'd just started a war she had no idea how to fight. But at least, those kids would have a chance. That had to be worth something. It had to be worth everything. Sarah Chen arrived at Mara's apartment at 9 p.m. with a laptop bag, 2 thermoses of coffee, and the kind of energy that suggested she'd mainlined espresso on the flight over. You live here? She didn't sound judgmental exactly, more surprised. Like she'd expected something different from someone who'd apparently just blown up a $100 million deal. Mara looked around her studio apartment, if you could call 400 square feet a studio, with fresh eyes. The futon that doubled as a couch, the kitchenette that was more kit than kitchen, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. Rent's cheap, she said, and it's close to the subway. Sarah set her bag down on the folding table that served as Mara's desk, dining table, and general surface for existing. Right, okay, let's get to work. For the next 4 hours, Mara talked and Sarah typed. Every detail of Project Helix, every test she'd run, Every red flag she'd documented. The metabolic pathway, the binding cascade, the specific genetic markers that made certain pediatric populations vulnerable. Sarah asked questions, sharp, precise questions that made it clear she actually understood the science. Not like the investors who just wanted the dumbed-down version. Not like Sloan, who'd stopped listening the moment the data contradicted what he wanted to hear. "And you're sure about the timeline?" Sarah asked around 1 a.m. 72 hours minimum before the accumulation shows up? In standard tissue cultures, yes. In live animal models, it took closer to 96 hours. That's why the preliminary trials didn't catch it. They were only running 48-hour observation windows. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. Which means Sloan either didn't know or he knew. Mara's voice was flat. "I told him, in writing, with 17 pages of supporting data." Jesus. Sarah sat back, rubbed her eyes. "Okay, I need to make some calls. We're going to need lab access, tissue samples, probably a few favors from people who owe me. This is going to take time." "How much time?" "A week, maybe 2 if we run into complications." Ethan said 72 hours. Ethan wants miracles, ideal in science. But Sarah was already pulling out her phone. "I'll get it done as fast as humanly possible. In the meantime, you need to dig up everything you still have from BioSure. Emails, notes, anything." Mara hesitated. "If I access those files, if I log into that email account, Sloan will know. He's probably monitoring it." "Good. Let him know. Let him sweat." Sarah's smile was sharp. "Besides, by tomorrow morning, the whole industry is going to know something's up. Ethan pulled a $100 million deal. That doesn't happen quietly." She wasn't wrong. By noon the next day, Mara's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Unknown numbers, blocked callers. She'd stopped answering after the first 3 turned out to be reporters asking for comment on the incident at the Carlyle. News traveled fast in Manhattan. Apparently, billionaires canceling major acquisitions traveled faster. She was sitting in her apartment staring at her laptop, trying to work up the nerve to log into her old BioSure email when someone knocked on her door. Not buzzed from downstairs. Knocked, which meant they'd gotten into the building. Mara's pulse jumped. "Who is it?" "Ms. Ellis? I'm Detective Marcus Webb, NYPD. I need to ask you a few questions." Her blood went cold. "About what?" "About Dr. Adrian Sloan." "Can you open the door, please?" She did, because what else was she going to do? The detective was older, maybe 50, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much. His partner was younger, a woman with dark hair pulled back severe. "Ms. Ellis? I'm Detective Webb. This is Detective Ramos. We're investigating allegations of corporate espionage." Of course. Of course Sloan had gone to the police. "I didn't steal anything," Mara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "That research was mine. I developed it." "That's not what Dr. Sloan says. He's filed a complaint stating you illegally accessed proprietary files and disclosed confidential information to a business competitor." "He's lying." "Maybe so. But we still need to ask you some questions. Can we come in?" They came in. They asked their questions. Mara answered carefully, keeping her voice level, trying not to sound defensive. Yes, she'd worked at BioSure. Yes, she'd been fired. No, she hadn't accessed their servers since. The information she'd shared with Ethan Vale came from her own research notes, her own memory. "And you just happen to have total recall of a complex molecular formula?" Detective Ramos sounded skeptical. "I spent 18 months working on it. Yes, I remember. Dr. Sloan says you were terminated for erratic behavior, that you made unfounded accusations against him. Dr. Sloan buried research that showed his drug was dangerous. I reported it. He didn't like that." Webb and Ramos exchanged a look, some silent communication Mara couldn't read. "Look," Webb said finally, "we're just doing our job here. Sloan filed a complaint, we have to investigate. But between you and me, this feels like a civil matter, not criminal. You might want to get a lawyer, though." "I'm working on it." They left. Mara closed the door behind them and realized her hands were shaking again. That seemed to be her default state now. Permanent tremor. Her phone rang. "Ethan, are you okay?" No preamble. Sarah said cops showed up. "How did you—" "Never mind. Yeah, they left." "What did you tell them?" "The truth." "Good. Don't talk to them again without a lawyer present. I'm sending someone over. Her name is Jennifer Park, best defense attorney in New York. She'll be there in an hour. Ethan, I can't afford. I told you, you're not paying. His voice was tight. This is exactly what I said would happen. Sloane's coming at you with everything. I know, it's fine. I expected. It's not fine, but we're going to handle it. A pause. How are you holding up? The question caught her off guard. Not what's your strategy, or do you have the files? Just how are you? I'm scared, she admitted. I keep thinking about what happens if you run the tests and I'm wrong. If I blew up my life and your deal for nothing. Are you wrong? No. Then hold on to that. Background noise on his end, voices calling his name. I have to go. Jennifer will be there soon. Listen to her. Do what she says. And Mara, don't go anywhere alone for the next few days. He hung up before she could ask why. Jennifer Park arrived exactly on time, which somehow didn't surprise Mara. She was polished in a way that probably cost $1,000 a day. Perfect suit, perfect hair, the kind of competence that radiated off her like cologne. Dr. Ellis, I've reviewed your case. We need to talk strategy. They talked for 2 hours. Jennifer was thorough, methodical, and surprisingly blunt. Sloane's playing this exactly right, she said. Criminal complaint to scare you, civil suit to bankrupt you, and he's already started a whisper campaign to destroy your credibility. By the end of the week, every news outlet in the city will be running stories about the unstable scientist who sabotaged a life-saving drug. But I didn't. Doesn't matter. He controls the narrative right now. We need to change that. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. Tell me about the research. Everything. And I mean everything. Any mistakes you made, any corners you cut, anything he could twist. I need to know it all. So Mara talked. Again. Third time in 24 hours, she'd gone through the whole story. It was getting easier, in a weird way. Or maybe just more surreal. The good news, Jennifer said when she finished, is that truth is an absolute defense to defamation. If we can prove your claims about the drug, Sloane's entire case collapses. And the bad news? The bad news is that proving it takes time, and Sloane knows that. He's going to use the next 2 weeks to bury you so deep that even if you're vindicated, your reputation never recovers. So what do I do? Keep your head down, don't talk to reporters, don't post anything on social media, don't even jaywalk. He's looking for anything he can use against you. Jennifer stood, smoothed her skirt. I'll handle the legal side. You focus on helping Dr. Chen verify your research. That's our kill shot. After Jennifer left, Mara sat in the silence of her apartment and tried not to think about how quickly everything had unraveled. 2 days ago, her biggest worry was making rent. Now she was caught in the middle of a corporate war with a man who had infinite resources and absolutely no conscience. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Her stomach dropped. She showed it to Jennifer on the way out. The lawyer's expression went hard. Screenshot that, forward it to me, don't respond. She paused at the door. And Dr. Ellis? Get better locks. Good ones. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. Every sound in the building made her jump. Footsteps in the hallway, the elevator ding, someone's TV too loud through the walls. She kept her phone next to the pillow, Ethan's number pulled up, ready to call. Around 3 a.m., she gave up and opened her laptop. Time to face the music. She logged into her old BioSure email account. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she typed in the password. Part of her expected it not to work. Surely they'd deleted her access years ago. It worked. Her inbox loaded, hundreds of unread messages, most of them spam. But there, buried in the old folders, was everything. Her correspondence with Sloane, the preliminary data, the draft reports, and most importantly, the final report she'd submitted, the one he'd claimed never existed. She downloaded everything to an encrypted drive, sent copies to Sarah, to Jennifer, to a burner email account she set up just for this, covered her tracks as best she could. When she was done, she noticed a new email had arrived, sent 5 minutes ago, from Sloane. The subject line read, "We need to talk." She shouldn't open it. Jennifer had been clear, no contact with Sloane. She opened it anyway. Dr. Ellis, I understand you're frightened and confused. This has all gotten out of hand so quickly. I want you to know I don't blame you for what happened at the Carlisle. You were put in an impossible position, and I should have been more understanding of the pressure you've been under since leaving BioSure. Let's meet. Just the two of us. I think we can find a resolution that doesn't involve lawyers or police. I'm at the Meridian Hotel, room 412. Come by tomorrow morning. Let's talk like colleagues, like we used to. Regards, Adrian. Mara read it 3 times. It was a trap. Obviously a trap. He wanted her alone, probably wanted her to say something he could record, use against her. But there was something else in the email, something that made her skin crawl. Like we used to. They'd never talked like colleagues. He'd barely acknowledged her existence except to take credit for her work. This weird, paternalistic tone, like he was doing her a favor by offering to meet, was new. She forwarded the email to Jennifer with a single line. He wants to meet. I assume this is a bad idea? The response came back within minutes, even at 3 a.m. Terrible idea. Do not go. Do not respond. I'm filing for a restraining order first thing tomorrow. Mara set down her phone and stared at the ceiling. The water stain looked like a face if you squinted. A melting, distorted face. Tomorrow, Sarah would start running the tests. Within a week, maybe 2, they'd have proof. Hard data. The kind of evidence that couldn't be spun or dismissed. She just had to survive until then. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. Another unknown number. Accidents happen to people who don't know when to shut up. She called Ethan. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? I'm getting threats. 2 texts tonight, anonymous. Send them to me and to Jennifer. Are you safe where you are? I don't know. I think so. That's not an answer. Sounds of movement on his end. Pack a bag. You're not staying there tonight. Ethan, I can't just... You can and you will. I'm sending a car. 20 minutes. Be ready. Where am I supposed to go? Somewhere Sloan can't find you. The car that showed up was black, expensive, and driven by a man who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun. He didn't speak, just held the door open and waited for Mara to climb in. They drove through the empty Manhattan streets, past the late-night diners still lit up like islands, past the clubs letting out drunk people stumbling toward cabs, past all the normal chaos of a city that never quite slept. The car pulled up to a building on the Upper East Side, not a hotel, a residence. The doorman nodded to the driver like he'd been expecting them. Mara followed them up to the 15th floor. The apartment the doorman unlocked was bigger than her entire building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, art on the walls that was probably real. Mr. Vale said to make yourself comfortable, the driver said. There's food in the kitchen. Security code for the alarm is on the counter. Don't open the door for anyone. This is Ethan's place. One of them. He'll be by in the morning. And then the driver was gone, and Mara was alone in an apartment that cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. She found the kitchen because, of course, there were multiple rooms, and it took her a minute to figure out which one was which. The refrigerator was stocked. Actual food, not just condiments and hope. She made herself a sandwich, then felt guilty about it and put everything back exactly as she'd found it. The couch in the living room was leather and probably cost more than her car used to. She sat down carefully, like she might break it. Her phone rang. Sarah. Hey, Ethan said you're at the safe house? Is that what this is? Close enough. Listen, I've got the lab set up, starting the tissue cultures tomorrow. But I need you to walk me through the binding sequence one more time. There's something in your notes I want to clarify. They spent an hour on the phone, going over molecular structures and reaction cascades. It felt normal, like the old days when Mara was still a scientist and not a waitress hiding from threats in a billionaire's spare apartment. You sound tired, Sarah said finally. I am tired. Get some sleep. This is going to take time and we need you sharp. After she hung up, Mara wandered through the apartment. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a study with a desk that looked like it had never been used, and in one of the bedrooms, on the nightstand, a framed photo. Ethan and a little girl. She had his eyes, that same intense focus, but her smile was pure joy. Lily. Had to be. Mara set the photo down carefully and left the room. It felt wrong being in this space, seeing pieces of Ethan's life he hadn't offered to share. She found blankets in a closet and made up the couch. Lying there in the dark, she tried not to think about the threats. About Sloan. About what happened if the tests came back inconclusive. Instead, she thought about the formula. The beautiful, terrible elegance of it. The way it should have worked. The way it almost did. Science was supposed to be clean, observable, testable, repeatable. You ran the experiments, you got the data, you followed the truth wherever it led. But people made it messy. People like Sloane who saw dollar signs where she saw danger. People like her who'd been too naive to understand that being right didn't matter if nobody listened. She must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing she knew, sunlight was streaming through the windows and someone was knocking on the door. Mara grabbed her phone, checked the time. 7 a.m. She looked through the peephole. Ethan stood in the hallway holding 2 coffee cups and a bag that smelled like fresh bagels. She opened the door. "You look like hell," he said. "Good morning to you too." He came in, set the coffee and bagels on the counter. "Did you sleep?" "Some, maybe. I'm not sure." She took one of the coffees gratefully. "Thank you for this. The apartment, I mean. You didn't have to—" "Yes, I did. Those texts weren't empty threats. Sloane's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Jennifer's filing for a restraining order." "Good. Won't stop him, but it's documentation." Ethan leaned against the counter, and Mara noticed the circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Sarah started the cultures this morning. She says 3 days minimum before we have preliminary results." "I know. She called me last night." "Right, of course." He rubbed his face. "Sorry. I'm running on no sleep and too much coffee. Lily had nightmares. She does that sometimes when I'm stressed. Kids pick up on things." "How much does she know about all this?" "Nothing. And I want to keep it that way." His voice was firm. "She's been through enough. She doesn't need to know her father almost bought a drug that could have hurt kids like her." Mara wanted to say it wasn't his fault, that he couldn't have known, but the words felt hollow, so she stayed quiet. "I pulled Sloane's complete history last night," Ethan said. "Every company he's worked for, every deal he's closed. Want to guess how many times this has happened before?" "Tell me." 4 times. 4 separate researchers who raised concerns about his projects. All of them fired. All of them blacklisted. 2 of them sued into bankruptcy. 1 left the country entirely. And nobody stopped him. Nobody with enough power to make it stick. He's good at picking targets. People without resources, without connections. People who can't fight back. Like me. Like you used to be. Ethan's eyes were hard. But you've got resources now. And I'm going to make damn sure he regrets coming after you. There was something in his voice, something beyond professional interest or even moral obligation, something personal. "Why are you doing this?" Mara asked. "Really? It's not just about the drug." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. He picked up his coffee, set it down without drinking. "When Lily got sick," he said finally, "I had money, power, every resource you could want. And you know what? It didn't matter. The cancer didn't care that I was a billionaire. The treatment didn't work faster because I could afford the best doctors. I was just another terrified parent, watching my kid suffer and hoping the medicine would work." He looked out the window at the city below. "But I got lucky. The trial she was in, it worked. She's here, she's healthy, she gets to grow up. And I know that's not because I deserved it or earned it, it's just luck. Random chance. The right combination of factors at the right time." So when you stood up in that restaurant and told me the drug was dangerous, when you risked everything to stop it, I heard you. Because I know what it's like to be desperate for hope, to want so badly for something to work that you ignore the warning signs. And I also know what it's like to watch people suffer because the system failed them. He turned to face her. "You didn't have to speak up. You could have kept serving coffee and let it play out. But you didn't. And maybe that makes you an idiot, but it also makes you someone worth fighting for." Mara's throat was tight. "I just did what anyone—" "No, don't do that. Don't minimize it." His voice was firm. "You did something brave and difficult, and you're paying for it. The least I can do is make sure you don't pay alone." Before Mara could respond, her phone rang. "Jennifer." "Turn on the news," the lawyer said without preamble. "Channel 7, now." Ethan found the remote, clicked on the TV mounted on the wall. It took a few seconds to find the right channel. A news anchor sat behind a desk, looking serious. Controversy surrounding yesterday's collapsed pharmaceutical deal. Dr. Adrian Sloane held a press conference this morning addressing allegations made by a former employee. The screen cut to footage of Sloane. He stood at a podium, looking grave and disappointed. Behind him, a banner read BioSure Solutions, Hope Through Science. I want to address the unfortunate incident that occurred yesterday, Sloan was saying. Dr. Mara Ellis, a former researcher at BioSure, made serious and unfounded allegations about Project Helix. While I understand she's been struggling since her departure from our company, I'm deeply saddened that she chose to spread misinformation that could delay life-saving treatment for children. Mara's stomach turned over. Dr. Ellis was terminated 3 years ago due to performance issues and erratic behavior. Since then, she's made several attempts to discredit our work. Yesterday, she targeted Mr. Ethan Vale with false claims during what should have been a routine business meeting. The camera flashed to a photo of Mara. Not recent. From her BioSure days, when she'd still looked like she slept and ate regular meals. They'd found her ID badge photo somewhere and blown it up on the screen. We've turned over all relevant documentation to law enforcement, Sloan continued. We're also pursuing legal action to protect our intellectual property and reputation. But more importantly, I want to assure the families waiting for this treatment. Project Helix is safe. It's been thoroughly tested, and we won't let one person's vendetta stop us from helping children. A reporter shouted a question Mara couldn't quite hear. Sloan nodded gravely. We're in discussions with other potential partners. The science speaks for itself. This is a minor setback, nothing more. Ethan turned off the TV. The silence in the apartment was deafening. He's good, Mara said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. I'll give him that. He's really good. He's a liar. Doesn't matter. Everyone's going to believe him. She could already imagine it. The think pieces. The social media pile-on. Crazy woman sabotages miracle cure. Bitter ex-employee ruins billionaire's charity work. Not everyone. Ethan pulled out his phone, started typing. I'm releasing a statement, making it clear that I pulled the deal based on legitimate safety concerns, not because of personal accusations. That'll just make him come at you harder. Let him try. The look on Ethan's face was pure steel. I've fought bigger battles than Adrian Sloan. Mara's phone started buzzing, not calls, texts, dozens of them. She made the mistake of checking. Unknown numbers, all variations on the same theme. Murderer, liar. How many kids will die because of you? Hope you're happy. She turned the phone off, sat down on the couch, tried to remember how to breathe. Hey! Ethan was suddenly there, crouched in front of her. Look at me. Mara, look at me. She did. This is what he does. He controls the narrative, makes you the villain so nobody looks too close at him. But it's temporary. Once Sarah verifies the research, once we have proof, what if it's not enough? What if people don't care about proof? Then we make them care. He stood. I'm calling my PR team. We're going to fight this. Not in the shadows, not quietly. If Sloan wants a war, we'll give him one. Her phone buzzed again. She'd turned it off, but apparently not all the way. One more message got through. This one wasn't a threat. You were right to speak up. I work at BioSure. I can't say more, but you were right. Be careful. Mara showed it to Ethan. He read it twice. There are cracks in his armor, he said. People who know the truth. We just need to find them. Or they need to find us. Either way, he handed her phone back. Get dressed. We're going to Sarah's lab. I want to see the tests myself. The lab was in a nondescript building in Brooklyn, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. Sarah met them at the door, looking exhausted but wired. Results are preliminary, she said, leading them into a room full of equipment Mara recognized like old friends. Microscopes. Centrifuges. The quiet hum of refrigeration units keeping samples stable. But you need to see this. She pulled up a screen showing fluorescent imaging of tissue samples. This is the control. Standard pediatric liver tissue exposed to the compound for 48 hours. No accumulation. Everything looks perfect. She clicked to the next image. This is the same tissue at 72 hours. The difference was stark. Bright spots where the compound had bound to cellular structures, not just binding, accumulating. And at 96 hours, Ethan's voice was tight. Sarah didn't answer, just clicked to the next image. The tissue was dead, massive cellular death radiating out from the binding sites. It's exactly what she said, Sarah said quietly. The compound crosses the blood-brain barrier, binds to neural tissue, and once it binds, it doesn't let go. By the 6th dose, you'd start seeing symptoms, seizures, cognitive decline. By the 8th dose, irreversible brain damage, Mara finished. Her voice was hollow. She'd known. She'd known for 3 years. But seeing it on the screen, seeing the proof, it made it real in a way memory couldn't. Ethan stared at the images for a long time. How many kids were in Sloan's Phase 2 trials? He asked finally. 40, Mara said. 20 in the treatment group, 20 control. And how many doses did they receive? Sarah checked her notes. According to the published data, they ran a 4-dose regimen over 8 weeks. So they stopped before the accumulation would show up. Probably on purpose, Mara said bitterly. Just long enough to show efficacy. Not long enough to show toxicity. Do we know what happened to those kids after the trial ended? Mara and Sarah looked at each other. Follow-up data should be public record, Sarah said slowly. Required by the FDA for Phase 2 trials. But I'd have to dig for it. Dig. Ethan's voice was hard. I want to know if any of those kids showed neurological symptoms after the trial. If even one of them had seizures or cognitive issues. That's not proof of causation, Mara said. Correlation isn't... I know, but it's a data point. And right now we need all the data points we can get. They spent the next hour going through Sarah's results. Every test confirmed what Mara had known in her gut. The formula was broken. Beautiful on paper, deadly in practice. How long before you can write this up? Ethan asked. Official report, peer-reviewed quality. A week, maybe less if I pull some favors. Do it. I want documentation so airtight that Sloan can't spin his way out of it. He turned to Mara. And I need you to write up your original findings. Everything you remember from the report he buried. We're going to run them side by side and show that you were right 3 years ago. Mara nodded. Her hands had stopped shaking, seeing the proof, having her work validated. It didn't fix everything, didn't undo the damage Sloan had done, but it was something, a foundation to build on. There's one more thing, Sarah said. She looked uncomfortable. I got a call this morning. Anonymous. Someone claiming to work at BioSure said they had documents that would help our case. The same person who texted me? Mara asked. Maybe. They want to meet. Tonight. Said they'd only talk to you. Ethan's expression went hard. Absolutely not. It's obviously a trap. Or it's someone who actually wants to help, Mara said. And you're willing to bet your life on that? I'm willing to bet that we need evidence, real evidence, not just lab results. If this person has documents, internal emails, anything that shows Sloan knew about the problems and buried them, then they can send them anonymously through a secure drop. You don't need to meet them in person. People don't risk their jobs, their careers, for anonymous file transfers. They need to know they can trust us, that we'll protect them. Ethan and Sarah exchanged a look. If you're going, Ethan said finally, I'm coming with you, and we're bringing security, non-negotiable. The meeting was set for 8 p.m. in a coffee shop in Queens, far enough from Manhattan to feel safe, public enough to discourage violence. Mara sat in a back booth with Ethan beside her and 2 very large men in dark suits trying to look inconspicuous by the door. They failed spectacularly at the inconspicuous part. This is insane, Ethan muttered. We should have sent Jennifer, or a private investigator, anyone but you. They asked for me specifically, which is exactly why we shouldn't... He stopped. A woman had entered the coffee shop. Young, maybe 25. She looked terrified. Her eyes scanned the room, landed on Mara, and something in her expression shifted. Recognition. She walked over slowly, sat down across from them without being invited. Dr. Ellis? That's me. I'm Rachel Kim. I work in data analysis at BioSure. She was speaking quickly, quietly. I was part of the team that processed the Phase 2 trial results. And? Rachel pulled out a flash drive, set it on the table like it was radioactive. I found something in the follow-up data. 3 of the kids from the treatment group developed seizures within 6 months of finishing the trial. 2 more showed significant cognitive decline. But when I brought it to my supervisor, he told me to exclude them from the final report, said they were anomalies. Complications from the underlying condition, not the treatment. Mara's blood ran cold. But you didn't believe him. I ran the statistics. The probability of 5 out of 20 showing those specific symptoms by chance? Essentially 0. So I kept digging, found emails between Dr. Sloan and the trial coordinator. They knew. They knew about the problems and they reported them as unrelated adverse events. That's fraud, Ethan said quietly. Federal fraud. I know. Rachel's hands were shaking. I made copies. Everything. But I don't know what to do with it. If I go to the FDA myself, Sloan will destroy me. He's done it before. But if I do nothing, more kids get hurt, Mara finished. Yeah. Rachel pushed the flash drive across the table. So I'm giving this to you, all of it. Emails, original data, everything. I'm trusting you to do the right thing. Why me? Mara asked. Why not go to a reporter or a lawyer? Because you already tried to stop this once. You lost everything and you still tried. That tells me you'll follow through, that you care more about being right than being safe. Rachel stood to leave. Wait, Ethan said. We can protect you, give you a lawyer, put you in contact with... No, I can't be involved. Not officially. If anyone asks, I was never here. You got this information some other way. Understand? She was gone before either of them could argue. Mara picked up the flash drive. Such a small thing to hold so much weight. We need to verify it, Ethan said. Make sure it's real and not some kind of setup. It's real. Mara could feel it, the same way she'd felt the wrongness in the formula. Some things you just knew. They left the coffee shop with the security team flanking them. Drove back to Manhattan in silence. The flash drive sat in Mara's pocket like a loaded gun. Back at the apartment, Ethan set up his laptop. Mara plugged in the drive. Files bloomed across the screen. Hundreds of them. Emails, spreadsheets, trial data, reports with whole sections redacted. And there, in a folder labeled Phase 2 Follow-Up, the smoking gun. 5 case files, 5 children who'd received the treatment, 5 sets of parents who'd been told their kids' seizures were just bad luck. Unrelated complications. Nothing to do with the miracle drug that was supposed to save them. Mara read through each file with mounting horror. A 7-year-old girl named Emma who'd started having seizures 3 months post-trial. Now she couldn't go to school without a medical aid. A 9-year-old boy named Marcus whose IQ had dropped 15 points. His parents thought the cancer had spread to his brain. Never knew it was the cure itself that damaged him. This is enough, Ethan said. His voice was rough. This is more than enough to bury him. We need to be careful how we release it. If we just dump everything online, I'm not talking about releasing it. I'm talking about giving it to the FBI. Mara looked up sharply. What? Federal fraud, falsified trial data, endangering children. This isn't a civil case anymore, Mara. This is criminal. And I know people at the Justice Department who'd love to make an example of someone like Sloan. He'll fight it. He has resources. So do I. And unlike him, I'm not trying to hide evidence of child endangerment. Ethan was already pulling out his phone, making calls, moving pieces on a chessboard Mara could only partially see. She sat back and watched him work, watched him transform from exhausted single father to something harder, something focused and relentless. This was the man who'd built an empire, who'd turned nothing into billions. And now he was turning all that power, all that focus, toward destroying Adrian Sloan. Around midnight, Ethan hung up his last call. It's done, he said. I've got a meeting with a federal prosecutor tomorrow morning. They're very interested in what we have to say. Just like that? Just like that. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Money doesn't buy justice, but it does buy access. And sometimes that's enough. Mara should have felt relieved, vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but once they start turning, Sloan's finished. And the kids? The ones who were hurt? We'll make sure they get help, treatment, compensation, whatever it takes. He paused. And we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. How? By finishing what you started. The research. The real cure. The one that actually works. Mara stared at him. You want me to, what? Go back to BioSure? No, I want you to work for me. Head up a new research division, properly funded, properly staffed. And this time, when you find a problem, when you raise a safety concern, people will listen. Ethan, I can't. I'm not. You're the person who sacrificed everything to do the right thing. That's exactly who I need. He met her eyes. Besides, You deserve the chance to finish your work. The right way. Don't you think? She did. She really did. But 3 years of failure, of rejection, of being told she was wrong, it was hard to let go of that. Hard to believe she could be a scientist again. Think about it, Ethan said. We've got times. But they didn't. Not really. Because somewhere in the city, Adrian Sloan was planning his next move, and men like him didn't go down quietly. The federal prosecutor's office was everything Mara expected. Sterile, fluorescent, the kind of place where Hope went to fill out paperwork in triplicate. Assistant U.S. Attorney David Chen didn't look like someone who could take down a pharmaceutical giant. He looked like someone's accountant. Thin-framed glasses, cheap suit, coffee stain on his tie that he'd tried to hide with his jacket, but his eyes were sharp when he looked at the flash drive Ethan handed over. You understand this needs to go through proper channels, Chen said. We can't just take anonymous evidence and run with it. Chain of custody matters. We'll need the original source to testify. The source won't testify, Mara said. That was the condition. Then we have a problem. No, Ethan's voice was flat. You have a problem if you ignore evidence of federal fraud because it's not gift-wrapped the way you want it. Those files show Dr. Sloan knowingly falsified clinical trial data. Children were hurt. More will be hurt if you sit on this. Chen bristled. Mr. Vale, I appreciate your concern, but we have procedures, and I have lawyers who'd be happy to explain to the press why the U.S. Attorney's Office chose procedures over protecting children. Your choice. The two men stared at each other, some kind of power calculation happening that Mara couldn't quite follow. Chen broke first. He always would. Men like Ethan Vale didn't lose staring contests. I'll open an investigation, Chen said finally. Preliminary review of the evidence. If it's solid, we'll move forward, but this takes time. Months, probably. Maybe longer. How much longer? Federal fraud cases are complex. We need to build an airtight prosecution, interview witnesses, subpoena records. If we move too fast, Sloan's lawyers will tear us apart in court. And in the meantime? In the meantime, Dr. Sloan continues his work, unless you have grounds for an immediate injunction, which I'm guessing you don't. Mara felt something cold settle in her stomach. So he just keeps going? Keeps selling the drug? Until we can prove wrongdoing in court? Yes, that's how the system works. The system is broken, she said quietly. Chen almost smiled. Welcome to federal prosecution, Dr. Ellis. We do our best with what we've got. They left the building an hour later with nothing but Chen's promise to investigate, which felt like trying to stop a flood with a paper towel. He'll drag this out, Mara said. They were in Ethan's car headed back to Manhattan. Sloan, I mean. He'll find other buyers, other partners. He could have the drug on the market before Chen even finishes his preliminary review. I know. So what do we do? Ethan was quiet for a long time, watching the city slide past the windows. We make it too expensive for anyone to touch him. Reputation, public opinion. We make Adrian Sloan toxic. How? I'm working on it. That afternoon, Mara met with Sarah again. The lab results were being written up, formal documentation that would stand up to peer review. But there was still work to do. I've been going through the Phase 2 trial data from Rachel's files, Sarah said. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The 5 kids who showed symptoms? I tracked down their medical records. 3 of them are still having seizures. The cognitive decline in 2 cases is permanent. Mara felt sick. Have their families been told? That the drug caused it? No. BioSure classified all the symptoms as unrelated adverse events. The families think it's just bad luck. Complications from the cancer. We need to tell them. And say what? Hi, the miracle drug that you thought saved your kid actually gave them brain damage? Without proof that'll hold up in court, we're just opening ourselves up to defamation suits. So we get proof. We have proof, but the families would need to sue BioSure to access their complete medical records. File complaints with the FDA. It's a years-long process, Mara. These people have already been through hell. Most of them can't afford that kind of fight. The unfairness of it hit Mara like a physical blow. The families who'd trusted the system, who'd enrolled their sick children in trials because they were desperate and hopeful and believed the research was sound. And now they were living with the consequences while Sloan walked free. What if we paid for it? Mara said suddenly. The legal fees, medical expenses. What if we found the families and offered to help them fight? Sarah looked at her like she'd suggested flying to the moon. With what money? You're broke, and I'm a research scientist. We don't have those kinds of resources. But Ethan does. You want to ask a billionaire to bankroll a lawsuit against the company he almost bought? That sounds exactly like something he'd do. Sarah pulled out her phone. I'll compile the list. Names, contact information, medical histories. But Mara, these families are vulnerable. We approach them wrong. We're just creating more victims. I know. Do you? Because the last time you tried to help, you ended up serving coffee for minimum wage. This could be even worse. It's already worse. For those kids, for their parents. If there's a chance we can fix even part of this, then we better not screw it up. Sarah started typing furiously. Give me 48 hours. I'll have everything you need. Mara left the lab and headed back to Ethan's apartment. It still felt strange, living in that much space, like wearing someone else's clothes. Her phone rang as she walked through the door. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Dr. Ellis? The voice was unfamiliar. Male, older. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm a reporter with the Manhattan Post. I'd like to ask you some questions about Adrian Sloan. Mara's first instinct was to hang up. Jennifer had been explicit. No press, no statements, nothing that could be used against them. But something made her hesitate. What kind of questions? I've been investigating BioSure Solutions for the past year, following up on some irregularities in their trial data. Your name came up in my research, multiple times, always in connection with safety concerns that were later dismissed. I can't comment on. I'm not asking for comment. I'm asking if you'd be willing to talk. Off the record, background only. Because I think there's a story here, and I think you're the only person who actually tried to tell it. Mara sat down on the couch. Why me? Because everyone else I've talked to is either too scared or too bought. But you already lost everything, which means you've got nothing left to lose, and that makes you dangerous to people like Sloan. He wasn't wrong. I need to talk to my lawyer first, Mara said. Of course. But Dr. Ellis, I'm going to write this story whether you help me or not. Question is whether you want it to be accurate. He gave her his direct line and hung up. Jennifer called back within an hour after Mara forwarded Hayes' information. Absolutely not, the lawyer said. Reporter or not, you talk to him. You give Sloan ammunition. He'll twist whatever you say. Hayes has been investigating BioSure for a year. He already knows something's wrong. Knowing and proving are different things. And until we have the federal investigation locked down, we don't give anyone a chance to undermine our case. So we just let Sloan control the narrative? For now, yes, that's exactly what we do. Jennifer's voice softened slightly. I know it's frustrating, but we're building towards something. A real case, real consequences. Don't blow it because you're impatient. After she hung up, Mara sat in the quiet apartment and tried not to feel like a coward. Tried not to think about Robert Hayes writing his story without her input. About what Sloan would say when the reporter came calling. About how easy it would be to twist the facts into something ugly. The door opened. Ethan walked in looking exhausted. Rough day? Mara asked. Lily's school called. She got in a fight with another kid. First time ever. The teacher said she's been acting out all week. He dropped his briefcase, ran his hands through his hair. She knows something's wrong. I keep telling her everything's fine, but kids aren't stupid. Maybe you should tell her the truth. Age-appropriate version, anyway. And say what? Daddy's busy destroying a man who tried to sell poison to sick children? That'll help her sleep at night. I meant tell her you're stressed, that you're dealing with work stuff. She doesn't need details. She just needs to know it's not her fault. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You have kids? No, but I was one. And my dad used to do the same thing. Pretend everything was perfect while his business was falling apart. I spent years thinking I'd done something wrong. That if I was better, quieter, smarter, maybe he wouldn't be so angry all the time. I'm not angry at Lily. I know. But she doesn't. All she sees is her dad who's suddenly never around, who's distracted when he is around. Kids fill in those blanks with their imagination, and their imagination is always worse than the truth. Ethan was quiet. Then he pulled out his phone, dialed. Hey, sweetie, yeah, I know it's past bedtime. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about this week. A pause. No, you're not in trouble. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were. Daddy's dealing with some grown-up problems at work. But that's not your fault, okay? None of this is your fault. Mara moved to the kitchen to give him privacy. Found herself making coffee even though it was almost 9 p.m. Old habit, something to do with her hands. When Ethan joined her 20 minutes later, he looked lighter somehow. She asked if the grown-up problems involved bad guys, he said. I told her, kind of. She said I should be careful because bad guys are tricky. Smart kid. Yeah. He smiled, but it faded quickly. She also asked if I was going to be okay. 6 years old and she's worried about me. That shouldn't be her job. It's not, but it's sweet that she cares. It's terrifying is what it is. Because what if I'm not okay? What if Sloan wins and the drug goes to market and people die? How do I explain that to her? You don't, because that's not going to happen. You sound very sure. I am sure. We have the evidence, we have the resources, and we have something Sloan doesn't. What's that? We actually give a damn about the truth. Ethan's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression changed. It's Chen, the prosecutor. He wants to meet tomorrow. Says it's urgent. They met Chen the next morning in a different office, more private, the kind of room where serious conversations happened. We have a problem, Chen said without preamble. The flash drive you gave us? Half the files are encrypted, password protected. We can't access them without the source's cooperation. So decrypt them, Ethan said. It's not that simple. Some of these files have military-grade encryption. It could take months to crack, and by then, Sloan's found another buyer and the drug is on the market. Mara felt cold. Rachel must have protected the most damaging files, the ones that prove intent. Can you contact her again? Chen asked. No, she made it clear. One meeting, one handoff. After that, she's out. Then we need to find another way to prove Sloan's intent. Witnesses. Other employees who will testify. You mean other people willing to destroy their careers and get sued into oblivion? Ethan's voice was sharp. Good luck with that. I'm open to suggestions, Mr. Vale. I've got one. We go public. Everything we have. Sarah's lab results. The trial data. We put it all out there and let Sloan try to explain why 5 kids from his trial group are having seizures. Chen shook his head. That poisons the jury pool. Any defense attorney worth their retainer would get the case thrown out on grounds of prejudicial publicity. We'd lose before we even started. So we're stuck. For now. Chen leaned forward. But there's another angle. The FDA. They have broader investigative powers. If we can get them to open an inquiry, they can compel testimony, subpoena records. And their standards for evidence are different than criminal court. How long would that take? Faster than a trial? Maybe. But it's still not immediate. Mara stood abruptly. This is insane. We have proof, actual proof. And you're telling me we can't use it because of procedures and jurisdiction and because we live in a country with laws, Chen interrupted. I know it's frustrating, but if we do this wrong, Sloan walks, and then he can't be tried again. Double jeopardy. So yes, we follow procedures. We cross our T's and dot our I's, and we build a case that actually sticks. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but Chen wasn't wrong. The system was broken, but it was the only system they had. Fine, she said. Contact the FDA. Do whatever you need to do, but do it fast. Because every day we wait is another day Sloan is out there finding ways to move his product. I'm aware, Dr. Ellis, believe me. They left the prosecutor's office with nothing but more waiting, more bureaucracy, more time for things to go wrong. I can't do this, Mara said in the car. I can't just sit around hoping the system works. Not when we know it doesn't. What's the alternative? We find Rachel, convince her to decrypt the files. She won't. She made that clear. Then we find someone else at BioSure, someone who knows what Sloan did, someone willing to talk. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. That's dangerous. For them and for us. I know, but it's better than nothing. Is it? He looked at her. Because every time you push, Sloan pushes back harder. At some point, he's going to stop playing nice. He was never playing nice, and I'm tired of being afraid of him. That night, Mara started making calls. Former BioSure employees whose names she found in Rachel's files. Most didn't answer, The ones who did hung up the moment she identified herself. Word had spread. Mara Ellis was toxic. Talking to her was career suicide. She was about to give up when her phone rang. Blocked number. Stop calling people. It was Rachel. She sounded terrified. You're going to get someone hurt. I need the passwords, Rachel, for the encrypted files. Without them, I can't. I gave you what I could. That's all. 5 kids, Rachel. 5 children who trusted the system and got brain damage instead of a cure. Don't you want to help them? Of course I want to help them. But I have a family, a mortgage, student loans I'll be paying off until I'm 50. If Sloan finds out I'm the source, he won't. We'll protect you. Like you protected yourself? You're hiding in a billionaire's apartment because Sloan wants you destroyed. That's not protection. That's barely survival. The words stung because they were true. Please, Mara said quietly. Those files are the only proof of intent we have. Without them, Sloan walks, and more kids die. Can you live with that? Silence on the other end. Long enough that Mara thought Rachel had hung up. There's someone else, Rachel said finally. Dr. Lin Chen. She was the head of safety protocols during Phase 2. If anyone has documentation of Sloan's decisions, it's her. But she left BioSure 6 months ago. I heard she was forced out after she raised concerns. Do you have contact information? No, but I know she moved to California, Palo Alto maybe. She was trying to get as far from Sloan as possible. Thank you. Don't thank me, and don't call again. I've already said too much. The line went dead. Mara immediately called Ethan. I have a lead, Dr. Lin Chen, former head of safety at BioSure. Rachel says she was forced out for raising concerns. So she's another one of Sloan's victims, which means she might be willing to talk, if we can find her. I'll have my people track her down. Give me 12 hours. It took 10. Dr. Lin Chen lived in a modest house in Palo Alto. According to Ethan's investigator, she was working part-time at a small biotech startup. No social media presence, no public statements about BioSure. She's hiding, Ethan said, same as you were. They flew to California the next morning, private jet because Ethan didn't do commercial, and Mara had stopped arguing about it. By noon, they were standing on Lin Chen's doorstep. The woman who answered looked like she'd been expecting them, or expecting someone. You're the waitress, Lin said. The one who stopped the Vale deal. Former waitress. I'm Dr. Mara Ellis. I know who you are. I read your original report, the one Sloan buried. It was good work. Thank you. Can we come in? Lin hesitated, then stepped aside. Her house was small but carefully maintained. Books everywhere. A cat that watched them suspiciously from the back of a chair. I can't help you, Lin said before they'd even sat down. Whatever you're looking for, I don't have it. We're looking for the truth, Mara said, about Project Helix, about what Sloan knew and when he knew it. And you think I'm going to jeopardize what's left of my career by going on record against him? I already tried that. It cost me everything. What did he do to you? Ethan asked quietly. Lin laughed bitterly. What didn't he do? I raised concerns about the trial data, pointed out the neurological symptoms in the follow-up group, suggested we halt Phase 3 until we could investigate. Sloan thanked me for my diligence. Then he restructured the department and eliminated my position. Gave me 6 months severance and an NDA that basically prevents me from ever working in pharmaceuticals again. Did you sign it? Of course I signed it. I needed to eat. And he made it very clear what would happen if I fought back. We're fighting back, Mara said, and we need your help. Documentation, emails, anything that shows Sloan was aware of the safety issues and chose to ignore them. I signed an NDA. NDAs don't protect illegal activity. If Sloan committed fraud, then prove it without me. I'm sorry, I really am, but I can't be part of this. They sat in silence. The cat jumped down and wound itself around Lin's legs. I have a daughter, Lin said quietly. 16. She wants to go to MIT, study bioengineering, follow in Mom's footsteps. She smiled sadly. I can't pay for MIT if I'm bankrupt from fighting Sloan, and I can't teach her that doing the right thing matters if it destroys our lives. Mara understood. Of course she understood. She'd made the same calculations, done the same risk assessment, and she'd chosen differently. When your daughter gets to MIT, Mara said, what are you going to tell her about your work? About what you did when you found out a drug was dangerous. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But those 5 kids who are having seizures, they didn't get a choice. Their parents enrolled them in a trial thinking it was safe, thinking people like you and me had done our jobs, had protected them. And we didn't, because we were afraid. I did my job. I reported the problems. Sloan chose to ignore me. And then you walked away, took the severance, signed the NDA, let him keep selling it. Lynn's face went red. You have no right. I have every right. I made the same choice you did. Stayed quiet when I should have screamed, and kids got hurt because of it. So yeah, I'm asking you to risk something, to fight back. Because if we don't, who will? Mr. Vale seems to have infinite resources, Lynn said coldly. Let him fight his own battles. This isn't his battle, it's ours, mine and yours, and every researcher who ever put their name on a trial and promised it was safe. Mara stood. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. You've been through enough. She headed for the door. Ethan followed. They were halfway down the walkway when Lynn called after them. Wait! They turned. Lynn stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. I kept copies of everything. The emails, the trial data, the safety reports Sloan had me rewrite. I told myself it was insurance, in case he came after me later. But really, I think I kept them because I knew someday I'd have to use them. Will you testify? Ethan asked. If you can guarantee my legal fees are covered and my daughter's education is protected, yes, I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Done. Just like that? Just like that. Ethan pulled out his phone. I'll have a contract drawn up within the hour. Full legal protection, education trust for your daughter, and a job offer when this is over, if you want it. Why? Lynn looked genuinely confused. Why would you do that for me? Because you were right, and you paid for being right. That shouldn't be how the system works. Lynn's eyes filled with tears. I'll get the files. She came back 20 minutes later with 2 external hard drives and a folder of printed documents. This is everything, she said, including emails where Sloan explicitly ordered me to exclude the neurological symptoms from the final safety report. He called them noise in the data, said they'd confuse investors. Mara took the drives carefully, like they might explode. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Sloan's going to fight this with everything he has. And he has a lot. So do we now. They flew back to New York that night. Mara sat with the hard drives in her lap the entire flight, like letting go of them might make them disappear. We should call Chen, Ethan said. Get this to the prosecutor as soon as we land. And the FDA. And the press. Mara looked at him. Robert Hayes, the reporter who called me. We should give him the story. Jennifer won't like that. Jennifer's not the one who spent 3 years watching Sloan get away with this. We have proof now. Real proof. We need to use it. Ethan considered. Call Hayes, set up a meeting. But we do it smart. Background first. Let him verify everything independently, and we don't give him anything that compromises the criminal case. Agreed. They landed at midnight. Mara called Hayes from the car. Dr. Ellis, I was beginning to think you'd decided to stay quiet. I changed my mind. Can you meet tomorrow? How's 8 a.m.? Perfect. Robert Hayes was younger than his voice suggested. Maybe 40. He had the look of someone who'd been chasing stories too long. Tired eyes, cheap clothes, coffee addiction that bordered on medical intervention. They met in a diner in Brooklyn. Neutral territory. Ethan had wanted to send security, but Mara had refused. This conversation needed to be private. Hayes spread out a notebook. Old school. No laptop. So, he said, tell me about Adrian Sloan. Mara talked for 2 hours. Hayes took notes in some kind of shorthand she couldn't read, asked pointed questions, pushed back on claims that felt weak. He was good, thorough. When she finished, he sat back and studied her. You know he's going to destroy you for this. He's already destroyed me. This is me returning the favor. Fair enough. Hayes tapped his pen against his notebook. Here's what I need. Independent verification of the lab results. On-record quotes from at least 2 sources confirming the trial data irregularities, and documentation that shows Sloan had knowledge of the safety issues. I can get you all of that. When? End of the week. Then I'll start writing. Article drops next Monday, front page. And Dr. Ellis? This is going to get ugly. You ready for that? I've been ready for 3 years. She wasn't. Not really. Because when the article dropped the following Monday, it was worse than anything she'd imagined. The headline was simple: Miracle Cure or Deadly Gamble? Inside BioSure's controversial cancer drug. Hayes had done his homework. The article laid out everything: the trial data, the neurological symptoms, Lin Chen's testimony, Sarah's lab results, and right in the middle, Mara's story. The researcher who'd tried to stop it and been silenced. Within hours, it had exploded. Every major news outlet picked it up. Cable news ran segments, social media went nuclear, and Sloan responded exactly as predicted. His lawyers released a statement calling the article a work of fiction funded by business rivals. He held another press conference, this time with sympathetic parents whose children had benefited from earlier trials. Emotional testimony about miracle recoveries, about hope where there'd been none. He was good, really good. And for every person who believed Mara's side, there was another who believed his. The death threats started that afternoon. Not texts this time. Emails, social media messages, voicemails that described in graphic detail what should happen to women who killed children's hope. Jennifer filed for police protection. Ethan hired more security. Mara stopped leaving the apartment entirely. "This is insane," she said to Sarah on the phone. "Half the country thinks I'm a hero. The other half thinks I'm a murderer. And the truth is somewhere in between. The truth is, you did the right thing. That's all that matters." "Does it? Because right now it feels like I started a war I can't win." "Then it's a good thing you're not fighting alone." The FDA announced their investigation 3 days later. Full review of BioSure's trial data. Suspension of Project Helix pending the outcome. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was something. Sloan held one more press conference. This time, the Polish had cracked. He looked haggard, angry. "This is a witch hunt," he said to the cameras. "A coordinated attack by people who care more about corporate competition than saving children. We have done nothing wrong. Our research is sound, and we will fight these baseless accusations with every resource at our disposal." Someone asked about the neurological symptoms. Unrelated adverse events. Thoroughly documented, not connected to our treatment. Someone asked about Dr. Lin Chen's testimony. Dr. Chen was terminated for performance issues. Her claims are the result of professional resentment, nothing more. Someone asked about Mara. Sloan's face went hard. "Dr. Ellis is a disturbed individual who has been harassing this company for years. We've tried to handle this quietly, out of concern for her well-being, but her continued attacks have left us no choice but to pursue legal action." And there it was. The threat made public. Mara watched the press conference from Ethan's apartment, watched Sloan lie with absolute conviction, watched reporters eat it up. "He's not going to stop," she said quietly. "Neither are we." Ethan was on his laptop, typing furiously. "Chen says the FDA investigation should wrap up in 6 weeks, 8 at most. Once they issue their findings, if they issue findings that support us. It's not guaranteed. It is guaranteed. We have the evidence. We have the witnesses. Sloan's done. He just doesn't know it yet." Mara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that truth and evidence and doing the right thing actually mattered, but 3 years of experience had taught her otherwise. That night she couldn't sleep, kept thinking about the 5 kids, about Emma with her seizures, Marcus with his declining IQ, 3 others whose names she'd memorized, kept thinking about all the kids who might be next if they failed. Around 2 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. "Dr. Ellis?" The voice was young, female. "This is Emma's mother, Emma Parker. She was in the BioSure trial." Mara sat up. "How did you get this number?" "Dr. Chen, Lin Chen. She said you were trying to help, that you knew what caused Emma's seizures." Yes, I believe so. The drug from the trial, the metabolic cascade. I don't understand the science. I just need to know if you're sure. If this is real." "It's real. I'm so sorry. The drug should never have been approved for trials. There were safety concerns that were buried." Silence. Then a sound that might have been crying. "We thought we were so lucky," Emma's mother said finally. "When she got into the trial, we thought it was going to save her. And it did. The cancer's gone. But Now she has seizures 3 times a week and the doctors can't stop them. And I need to know it's not our fault. That we didn't do something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. The people running the trial did. They knew there were risks and they hid them. Can we sue them? Make them pay for Emma's medical bills? Yes. We're building a case. It'll take time, but yes, we'll make them pay. Good. The word came out fierce. Because Emma wants to be a dancer. She's 8 years old and she wants to be a dancer, and now she can't because she never knows when she's going to collapse. And someone needs to answer for that. They will, I promise. After she hung up, Mara sat in the dark and let herself cry. For Emma, for all the others, for the system that had failed them so completely. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. You okay? Saw the light on. No, but I will be, after we win. We're going to win. How do you know? Because we have to. There's no other option. And maybe that was enough. Maybe having no other option was what made you fight harder, made you refuse to give up even when everything looked impossible. The FDA's preliminary findings came back 4 weeks later. Not the full investigation, just initial results. They confirmed everything. The metabolic cascade, the neural accumulation, the correlation between the drug and neurological symptoms in the trial group. BioSure's stock dropped 40% in a single day. Sloan held no more press conferences. Chen called that afternoon. We're moving forward with criminal charges, federal fraud, falsifying clinical trial data, endangering human subjects. If convicted, Sloan's looking at 15 to 20 years. And the drug? Mara asked. Dead? FDA's pulling all approvals. BioSure is finished. It should have felt like victory, should have felt like justice. Instead, Mara just felt tired. What happens to the kids? She asked. The ones who were hurt? That civil court, class action lawsuit probably, could take years to settle. But they'll get help. Eventually, if the company doesn't declare bankruptcy first. Always another complication, another delay, another way for justice to slip through the cracks. But at least the drug was stopped. At least no more kids would be hurt. That had to count for something. The arrest happened 2 days later. Federal agents showed up at Sloan's office with cameras rolling. He was walked out in handcuffs while reporters shouted questions. The image was everywhere by evening. Adrian Sloan, the respected researcher, the man who'd promised miracle cures, reduced to another white-collar criminal. Mara watched the footage on the news. Felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just empty. You did it, Ethan said. He'd come over with takeout, like that would somehow make everything normal. You stopped him. We stopped him. Sarah, Lynn, Rachel, Chen, all of us. But you started it. You're the one who risked everything. And what did I win? Sloan's going to prison. The drug's dead. But those 5 kids still have brain damage. Emma still can't be a dancer. Marcus still lost 15 IQ points. We didn't fix anything. We just prevented it from getting worse. That's not nothing. It's not enough. Ethan set down his food, looked at her seriously. Nothing's ever going to be enough. You can't save everyone, Mara. You can't undo what already happened. All you can do is try to make the future better than the past. And how do we do that? We finish the research the right way this time. We find the cure that actually works, and we make sure it's safe before it goes to trial. You're still offering me the job. Of course I'm still offering you the job. You're brilliant, you're ethical, and you're too stubborn to quit. That's exactly who I need running my research division. Mara thought about it, thought about going back to the lab, back to the work she'd loved before Sloan destroyed it, thought about Emma and Marcus and the others, about doing the research that might actually help them. Okay, she said, I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. Full autonomy. If I say something's unsafe, we stop. No matter how much money is on the line, no matter what investors want, my call. Done. And I want Sarah as my deputy, and Lynn Chen if she's willing. Done and done. And I want the families from the BioSure trial taken care of. Medical expenses, education funds, whatever they need. Already working on it. Mara smiled. First real smile in weeks. Then I guess we have a deal. They shook on it. Formal and ridiculous and somehow exactly right. Outside, the city lights glittered. Millions of people living their lives. Some of them sick. Some of them desperate. Some of them waiting for a cure that might never come. But at least now they'd be waiting for something real, something safe, something that wouldn't hurt them while claiming to heal. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. The trial started 6 months later in a federal courthouse that smelled like old wood and broken promises. Mara sat in the gallery behind the prosecution table, watching Adrian Sloan walk in with his team of lawyers. He looked smaller somehow, less polished. The silver hair that had made him look distinguished now just made him look old. He didn't look at her. Not once. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. The judge was a small woman with steel gray hair and eyes that suggested she'd heard every lie ever told and believed none of them. She surveyed the courtroom like a general assessing a battlefield. Be seated. We're here for United States versus Adrian Sloan. Are both sides ready to proceed? Chen stood. The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. Sloan's lead attorney, a man named Richard Caldwell, who probably charged more per hour than Mara used to make in a month, rose smoothly. The defense is ready, Your Honor. And so it began. Chen's opening statement was methodical. He laid out the case piece by piece, the falsified trial data, the hidden safety concerns, the children who'd been hurt. He spoke without drama, without flourish, just facts, numbers, evidence. Caldwell's opening was different. He painted Sloan as a dedicated researcher whose only crime was pushing boundaries. He talked about the desperate families who'd begged for access to experimental treatments, about the impossible choices scientists faced when dealing with terminal illness. Dr. Sloan is not on trial for being ambitious, Caldwell said. He's on trial because his competitors wanted him destroyed. Because Dr. Mara Ellis, a disgruntled former employee, launched a vendetta that ruined a promising treatment. The prosecution will show you data, but data can be manipulated, interpreted, twisted to fit a narrative. What they can't show you is intent, because there was no intent to deceive, only a desire to save lives. Mara felt sick. He was good. Caldwell was really good. And the jury was listening. The first week was technical testimony. Sarah took the stand and walked the jury through her lab results, explained the metabolic cascade, the neural accumulation. She used simple language, clear examples, made complex science accessible. On cross-examination, Caldwell tore into her methodology. Dr. Chen, you ran these tests at whose request? Mr. Vale's and Dr. Ellis. Dr. Ellis, the woman who claims Dr. Sloan stole her research? Objection, relevance. Chen was on his feet. Your Honor, the witness's bias is directly relevant to the reliability of her findings. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Mr. Caldwell. Dr. Chen, were you paid for this work? Yes. Standard research consulting fees. How much? Sarah named a figure. It sounded obscene in the quiet courtroom. So you have a financial incentive to produce results that support Mr. Vale's narrative? I have a financial incentive to do good science. The results speak for themselves. Do they? Because I have 3 independent experts who reviewed your data and reached different conclusions. Experts who don't have financial ties to either party. It went on like that, back and forth, every piece of evidence challenged, every witness questioned. Lynchen testified in week 2. She was nervous, kept twisting her hands together, but her testimony was damning. Dr. Sloan explicitly told me to exclude the neurological symptoms from the safety report, she said. He called them statistical noise, said they'd confuse investors and delay approval. And you have documentation of this? Yes, emails, meeting notes, all submitted as evidence. Caldwell's cross was brutal. Dr. Chen, you signed an NDA when you left BioSure, correct? Yes. An NDA that prohibited you from disclosing confidential company information? Yes, but... And you violated that NDA by providing information to the prosecution? The NDA doesn't protect illegal activity. That's not for you to decide, is it? You're a scientist, not a lawyer. Yet you took it upon yourself to violate a legal contract because you disagreed with your employer's decisions? Because children were being hurt. Were they? Or were you angry about being terminated and looking for revenge? Lynn's face went red. I was terminated because I refused to falsify data. According to you. But the termination letter cites performance issues, missed deadlines, conflicts with colleagues. Nothing about refusing to falsify data. Because Sloan wrote that letter. Of course he's not going to admit, Please answer the question, Dr. Chen. The official reason for your termination was performance issues, correct? That's what the letter says, yes. Thank you. No further questions. Mara watched Lynn walk back to her seat, shoulders slumped. Caldwell had made her look like a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. Never mind the evidence. Never mind the truth. The parents testified in week 3. Emma's mother took the stand and described her daughter's seizures. The way Emma had been so excited about dance class before the trial. How she'd practiced pirouettes in the kitchen until she could barely stand. She can't do that anymore, Mrs. Parker said quietly. She's on so much medication just to control the seizures. And even then, we never know when one might happen. She's afraid all the time. Afraid to leave the house. Afraid to be alone. She's 8 years old and she's afraid of her own body. Caldwell didn't cross-examine aggressively. Smart. Attacking grieving parents wouldn't play well with the jury. Mrs. Parker, I'm so sorry for what your daughter has endured, truly. But can you say with absolute certainty that the drug caused her seizures? Or is it possible they're a complication of the cancer itself? The doctor said, I'm asking what you know for certain, not what doctors speculate. Mrs. Parker's hands clenched. I know my daughter was healthy except for the cancer. I know she went into that trial and came out having seizures. I know that's not a coincidence. But you can't prove a causation. You just believe it. Yes, I believe it. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. No further questions. 4 more parents testified. Similar stories. Children who'd developed symptoms after the trial, lives disrupted, futures stolen, and each time Caldwell asked the same question. Can you prove causation? Can you be absolutely certain? And each time the answer was the same. Belief, not proof. Mara took the stand on day 17. She'd been dreading it, preparing for it, going over her testimony with Chen until she could recite it in her sleep. But nothing prepared her for the reality of sitting in that witness box with Sloan 15 feet away and a jury watching every micro-expression. Chen started gently, walking her through her background, her education, her work at BioSure. Dr. Ellis, when did you first identify concerns with Project Helix? About 14 months into the research. I was running extended timeline simulations and noticed an accumulation pattern in the neural tissue samples. What did you do with this information? I documented everything, ran additional tests to confirm. Then I wrote a comprehensive report detailing the safety concerns and submitted it to Dr. Sloan. And what was his response? He thanked me, said they'd look into it. 2 days later, I was fired. Did he give a reason for your termination? Not at the time. Later, the official documentation cited performance issues. Were there performance issues? No, my reviews had all been excellent. I'd met every deadline, exceeded every benchmark. The performance issues were invented after the fact. Chen introduced her original report into evidence, walked her through it page by page, had her explain the science in terms the jury could understand. It felt good, vindicating, like finally being heard after years of silence. Then Caldwell stood for cross-examination, and everything changed. Dr. Ellis, you were fired from BioSure 3 years ago, correct? I was terminated, yes. And in those 3 years, you've been unable to find comparable employment. I was blacklisted. Sloan made sure. Please answer the question. Have you worked as a research scientist since leaving BioSure? No. What have you been doing? Mara's throat was tight. Various jobs, service industry mostly. Service industry. You mean you were a waitress? Yes. From respected researcher to waitress, that must have been difficult. Objection. Relevance. Chen sounded angry. Your Honor, the witness's emotional state and potential motivations are directly relevant. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Caldwell. Dr. Ellis, would you say you harbor resentment toward Dr. Sloan? I harbor resentment toward what he did, the lies, the cover-up. But you acknowledge you're emotionally invested in seeing him punished? I'm invested in seeing justice done. Justice? Or revenge? Caldwell pulled out a document. This is a text message you sent to a friend 6 months after leaving BioSure. I'll read the relevant portion. I hope Sloan burns for what he did. I hope he loses everything like I lost everything. Does that sound like someone interested in justice or someone interested in revenge? Mara felt the blood drain from her face. She'd forgotten about that text. A moment of weakness, venting to a friend after too much wine and too little sleep. I was angry. I just lost my career. Angry enough to fabricate evidence? To manipulate data to support your narrative? I didn't fabricate anything. You expect this jury to believe that you, a trained scientist, just happened to remember complex molecular formulas perfectly 3 years after being fired? That you could reconstruct an entire research report from memory? I lived with that research for 18 months. Of course I remember it. Or you had copies, illegal copies that violated your employment contract and NDA. I had preliminary notes that I'd sent to my personal email before you knew you'd be fired. How convenient. Caldwell smiled. So you were planning to steal company research even before your termination? No, I was backing up my work, which is standard practice. Standard practice to violate company policy and retain proprietary information? Chen objected. The judge sustained, but the damage was done. Caldwell had made her look like a vengeful ex-employee who'd stolen data and fabricated a case. The cross-examination went on for 3 hours. Every detail of her story questioned, every decision scrutinized. By the end, Mara felt like she'd been flayed alive. She stepped down from the witness stand on shaking legs, walked back to her seat without looking at the jury, couldn't bear to see their faces. You did fine, Chen whispered. He was aggressive, but you held up. Mara didn't answer. Fine wasn't good enough. Not when Sloane's freedom depended on the jury believing her over him. That night she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just replayed the cross-examination over and over, thinking of all the things she should have said, all the ways she could have defended herself better. Ethan called around midnight. Stop torturing yourself, he said. I was there. You were credible. Caldwell's just doing his job. His job is making me look like a liar. His job is creating reasonable doubt. But we have the evidence, the lab results, the trial data, Lynn's testimony. He can attack you all he wants, but he can't make the science go away. Can't he? Because he's got 3 experts who say Sarah's methodology was flawed, who say the accumulation pattern could be explained by other factors, who say there's no definitive proof the drug caused the neurological symptoms. And we have 5 experts who say the opposite. So it's a tie, and ties go to the defendant. Ethan was quiet for a moment. You want me to tell you we're going to win? I want you to tell me the truth. The truth is I don't know. Chen thinks we have a strong case, but Caldwell's better than we expected, and juries are unpredictable. That's not comforting. It's honest, Mara laughed bitterly. Yeah, I guess it is. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's closing arguments. After that, it's out of our hands. But sleep didn't come. Mara lay in bed and watched the ceiling and tried not to think about what happened if they lost. If Sloane walked free. If all of this, the testimony, the evidence, the destroyed careers, amounted to nothing. Closing arguments started at 9 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, curious observers, the parents of the injured children. Chen went first. He was methodical as always, reviewed the evidence piece by piece, the falsified reports, the hidden safety data, the emails showing Sloane's knowledge and intent. The defense will try to convince you this is about ambition, about pushing boundaries in the name of science. But this case is actually very simple. Dr. Adrian Sloane knew his drug was dangerous. He knew children could be hurt, and he sold it anyway. Not because he was ambitious, not because he was trying to help, but because he cared more about money than lives. The evidence proves it. The witnesses confirm it. And I trust that you, the jury, will see through the smoke and mirrors to the truth underneath. Thank you. Caldwell stood. He didn't go to the podium, just walked directly to the jury box and looked at them like they were old friends. My colleague wants you to believe this is simple. It's not. Science is never simple. Dr. Sloane dedicated his life to finding treatments for childhood cancer, devoted decades to research that has saved countless lives. Was he perfect? No. Did he make mistakes? Perhaps. But mistakes are not crimes, and disagreements about data interpretation are not fraud. He paced slowly, making eye contact with each juror. The prosecution's entire case rests on the testimony of 3 people. Dr. Ellis, who admits she harbors deep resentment toward Dr. Sloane. Dr. Chen, who violated her NDA to provide testimony. And Dr. Lin Chen, who was terminated for performance issues and has a clear motive to lie. Are these credible witnesses, or are they people with axes to grind? He paused for effect. And what about the children? Of course we feel for them. Of course we wish they weren't suffering. But correlation is not causation. These children were already sick, already undergoing treatments that can have severe side effects. To definitively say the drug caused their symptoms, not the cancer, not the other medications, not random chance, that requires proof, real proof, not speculation, not theories, not the biased opinions of witnesses with motives to lie. He turned back to the jury. The prosecution hasn't met their burden. They've presented a conspiracy theory built on circumstantial evidence and bitter testimony. But conspiracy theories aren't enough to convict. Doubt is enough to acquit. And if you have any doubt, any at all, about whether Dr. Sloan intended to commit fraud, then you must find him not guilty. Because in America, we don't destroy people's lives based on maybe. We require proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and that proof simply doesn't exist. Thank you. He sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison gave the jury their instructions, explained the law, the burden of proof, the definition of reasonable doubt, and then they filed out to deliberate. The waiting was torture. Hours stretched into days. The jury requested to review evidence, asked for clarification on legal definitions, sent out notes that revealed nothing about which way they were leaning. On day 3, Mara couldn't take it anymore. She left the courthouse and walked. Just walked through Manhattan without destination or purpose. Past the Carlisle where this had all started, past her old apartment building, past the places she'd been when she was still a scientist and not a woman who'd gambled everything on justice. Her phone rang. Chen. They're back. Verdict's in. Get to the courthouse. Mara ran. Actually ran through the streets, dodging pedestrians and traffic. Made it to the courtroom with minutes to spare. The jury filed in. Mara tried to read their faces. Failed completely. They could have been deciding where to have lunch for all the emotion they showed. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On the count of federal fraud, how do you find? Mara couldn't breathe. The courtroom had gone absolutely silent. We find the defendant guilty. The word hit like a thunderclap. Guilty. After everything, after all the doubt and fear and uncertainty, guilty. On the count of falsifying clinical trial data, guilty. On the count of endangering human subjects, guilty. 3 for 3. Guilty on all counts. Sloan's face went gray. Caldwell was already whispering urgently in his ear, probably talking about appeals. But it didn't matter. Not right now. Right now, they'd won. Judge Morrison thanked the jury and dismissed them. Set a sentencing date for 6 weeks out. Reminded everyone that Sloan was to surrender his passport and remain in the jurisdiction. Then it was over. The bailiff led Sloan out through a side door. He didn't look at anyone, didn't make a statement, just disappeared like he'd never been there at all. Mara sat in the gallery and tried to process it. They'd won. After everything, they'd actually won. Chen turned around, grinned at her. We did it. You did it, Mara said. I just testified. You did more than that. You started this. You stood up when no one else would. That's what made this possible. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. Cameras, microphones, questions shouted from every direction. Chen gave a brief statement, professional, measured. Justice was served today. Dr. Sloan betrayed the trust of the families who participated in his trials. The jury's verdict affirms that no one is above the law, not even respected scientists. We're grateful for this outcome and hope it brings some measure of closure to the victims. Someone shouted a question at Mara. Dr. Ellis, how does it feel to finally be vindicated? She looked at the cameras, at the reporters, at all the people who'd called her a liar and a fraud. It doesn't feel like vindication, she said quietly. It feels like the bare minimum. 5 children still have neurological damage. Emma still can't dance. Marcus still struggles with basic math. The verdict doesn't fix that, it just stops it from happening to more kids. What's next for you? Work, real work. Finding a cure that actually works. That's all I've ever wanted. Ethan was waiting by his car, away from the media circus. Mara broke away from the reporters and joined him. Hell of a day, he said. Yeah. You okay? I don't know, ask me tomorrow. She looked back at the courthouse. How long will he serve? Realistically? 10 to 15 years probably, with good behavior, maybe less. But his career is over. His reputation is destroyed. That's not nothing. It's not enough. It never is. Ethan opened the car door for her. But it's what we got. And sometimes what we got is all we need to move forward. They drove in silence. Mara watched the city pass by and thought about the past 6 months. The fear, the doubt, the endless waiting. And now it was over. Sloan was convicted. The drug was dead. The families would get their settlements. Everything she'd fought for had been achieved. So why did she still feel empty? The sentencing hearing was short and brutal. Sloan's lawyers argued for leniency, pointed to his years of service, his contributions to science, his lack of prior criminal history. The prosecution countered with the victims, with Emma and Marcus and the others, with the families whose lives had been destroyed. Judge Morrison listened to both sides. Then she looked at Sloan with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. Dr. Sloan, you were given a tremendous gift. Intellect, education, resources, the opportunity to make a real difference in the world. And you squandered it. You chose profit over safety. You chose your ego over children's lives. The law allows me to sentence you to up to 20 years on these charges. I'm going to impose 15. I hope you spend every day of those 15 years thinking about the children you hurt, about the trust you betrayed. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Sloan was led away in handcuffs. This time he looked at Mara as he passed, not with anger, with something else. Resignation, maybe, or acceptance. She held his gaze until he was gone. Outside, the parents were waiting. Mrs. Parker approached first. Thank you, she said simply. I know it doesn't fix anything, but thank you for fighting. I should have fought sooner. I should have... You did what you could when you could. That's all any of us can do. She hugged Mara quickly. Emma's starting to have good days again. The new medication is helping. She even talked about dance class last week. Maybe not performing, but just dancing. For herself. Mara's eyes burned. That's good. That's really good. It's a start, and starts matter. The other parents came over. Similar gratitude, similar stories of small progress and fragile hope. By the time they dispersed, Mara felt wrung out, exhausted, but lighter somehow. Come on, Ethan said. I'm taking you to dinner, somewhere nice. Not the Carlisle, though. Definitely not the Carlisle. They went to a small Italian place in the village. Quiet, intimate. The kind of restaurant where the owner knew the regulars by name and the wine was older than Mara. To victory, Ethan said, raising his glass. To survival, Mara corrected. That too. They ate slowly, talked about everything except the trial. Ethan told stories about Lily's latest obsession with marine biology, how she wanted to be a scientist when she grew up, study ocean ecosystems and save the whales. She asked if you could come to her science fair next month, Ethan said. Said she wants to show you her project on bioluminescence. I'd love to. Fair warning, she's very intense about it. You'll get a full presentation, probably diagrams. I like diagrams. Of course you do. Ethan smiled. She looks up to you, you know. Keeps asking when you're starting the new lab. When she can visit. Tell her soon. Another month or two to get everything set up, then she can have the full tour. She'll hold you to that. Good. They finished dinner and walked through the village. It was late enough that the crowds had thinned. Just couples and night workers and people with nowhere better to be. Can I ask you something? Mara said. Why did you really do all this? The lawyers, the investigation, the job offer? You barely knew me when this started. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When Lily was sick, I felt helpless. All the money in the world couldn't guarantee the treatment would work. Couldn't protect her from pain. I hated that feeling, being powerless. He stopped walking, looked at her directly. And then you stood up in that restaurant and stopped me from making a terrible mistake. From hurting kids like Lily, you had every reason to stay quiet, to protect yourself. But you didn't. And I realized that's what real power looks like. Not money, not influence, just the courage to do the right thing when it costs you everything. I'm not that brave. You're braver than you think, and you deserve better than serving coffee and hiding from people who should be celebrating you. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she just walked beside him in comfortable silence. They ended up back at his apartment building. The doorman nodded them through. "You want to come up?" Ethan asked. "I've got decaf, and probably some cookies Lily's nanny made." "Homemade cookies?" "I'm a billionaire. Everything's homemade." They rode the elevator to his floor. The apartment was dark and quiet. Lily was at her mother's for the week. Ethan had split custody, something he rarely talked about. He made coffee while Mara found the cookies. They were good, really good. "So what happens now?" Ethan asked. "With the research. Where do you want to start?" "The beginning. The original formula. I want to see if we can redesign the binding mechanism, eliminate the neural accumulation while preserving the therapeutic effect. Think it's possible? I don't know. But I want to try. And this time I want to do it right. Full safety protocols, transparent reporting, no shortcuts." "That'll take time." "Good research always does." Ethan looked at her over his coffee cup. "You're really going to do this? Dedicate years to something that might not work?" "That's what science is. Trying things that might not work until you find something that does. You know I'm going to hold you to that full autonomy thing. If you say stop, we stop. Even if we're $1 million in, even if we're 90% done." "I know. That's why I said yes." They talked for hours about the research, about the lab setup, about hiring decisions and equipment needs, and all the boring logistics that made good science possible. Around 2 a.m., Mara finally stood to leave. "Thank you," she said, "for all of it, the support, the resources, the faith. Thank you for giving me something worth investing in, something that matters." He walked her to the door. They stood there for a moment, not quite knowing how to end the evening. "See you Monday?" Ethan said finally. "Start setting up the lab?" "See you Monday." Mara went back to her own apartment. She'd moved out of Ethan's place once the trial ended, found a small one-bedroom she could actually afford now that she had a salary again. It was modest, nothing fancy. But it was hers. She made tea and sat by the window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there Sloane was in a cell, probably not sleeping, probably running through appeals strategies and legal technicalities. And somewhere else, Emma was hopefully dreaming about dancing. Marcus was doing better in school. The other kids were healing slowly, imperfectly, but healing. It wasn't a perfect ending, wasn't a miracle cure or a complete victory, but it was real and honest and better than where they'd started. That had to count for something. Mara's phone buzzed, text from Sarah. "Saw the sentencing, 15 years. Not bad. Want to grab breakfast tomorrow? Celebrate properly?" "Can't. Meeting with Ethan about lab setup. Rain check?" "You're really doing this. The research position." "I'm really doing it." "Good. You deserve it. And I'm expecting that deputy director role to be official soon. Already sent you the contract. Check your email." "Perfect. See you Monday, boss." "Boss." Mara rolled the word around in her head. Dr. Mara Ellis, Director of Research. It sounded foreign, impossible, but also right. She finished her tea and went to bed. Tomorrow was Monday. The start of something new, something that might fail or might succeed but was absolutely, definitely worth trying. For the first time in 3 years, Mara fell asleep without fear, without doubt, just the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. And in the morning, she'd get back to work. The lab smelled like new paint and possibility. Mara stood in the doorway on that first Monday morning, taking it all in. State-of-the-art equipment still wrapped in protective plastic, workstations arranged in clusters, a conference room with glass walls, and in the corner, her office, her name already on the door. Dr. Mara Ellis, Director of Research. "You going to stand there all day or actually come in?" Sarah was already at a workstation, unpacking boxes. "We've got equipment to calibrate, protocols to establish, and I found 3 typos in the safety guidelines you sent over." "Of course you did. That's why you hired me. Quality control." Lin Chen arrived an hour later, looking nervous. She'd taken the deputy position Ethan offered, relocating from California with her daughter. It was a risk, starting over. Again. "This is really happening," Lin said, looking around the lab. "We're really doing this." "We're really doing it," Mara confirmed. "Your workstation is the one by the window. I remembered you like natural light." "You remembered that?" "I remember everything. It's a blessing and a curse." They spent the morning setting up. calibrating instruments, loading software, arguing about the placement of the centrifuge until Sarah threatened to make an executive decision that they'd both hate. Around noon, Ethan showed up with lunch. Sandwiches from a deli that probably cost more than Mara used to spend on groceries for a week. "How's the first day?" he asked. "Overwhelming, exciting, terrifying." Mara accepted a sandwich. "All of the above." "Good. That means you care." He looked around the lab with obvious satisfaction. "This is going to work. I can feel it." "Feelings aren't data." "No, but they're a start." He checked his watch. "I've got a board meeting in an hour, but I wanted to see you settled in. Make sure you had everything you needed." "We're good. Really. Go run your empire." After he left, the three women sat in the conference room eating sandwiches and talking about the work ahead, the redesign of the molecular structure, the testing protocols, the timeline that stretched out in front of them like a marathon with no finish line in sight. "This could take years," Lynn said. 5, maybe 10 before we even get to human trials." "I know. And it might not work. We could spend a decade on this and end up with nothing." "I know that too." "Then why do it?" Mara thought about Emma, about Marcus, about all the kids still waiting for a cure that actually worked. Because someone has to. And we're the ones who know what not to do. That's worth something. Sarah raised her coffee cup. "To doing it right, even if it takes forever." "To doing it right," they echoed. The first month was brutal. Long days, longer nights. The molecular redesign was harder than Mara expected. Every change they made to eliminate the neural binding affected the therapeutic efficacy. It was like trying to remove one thread from a tapestry without unraveling the whole thing. "We're going in circles," Sarah said one night. It was past 11. They were the only ones left in the building. "Every version we try either doesn't work or isn't safe, so we keep trying." "For how long? At what point do we admit maybe the original concept was just flawed?" "We don't, not yet." Mara pulled up a new simulation on the screen. "Look at this binding site. What if we modified the tertiary structure here, changed the approach angle?" Sarah leaned in, studied the model. "That might work, or it might make it worse. Only one way to find out." They ran the simulation, waited while the computer processed thousands of molecular interactions. The results came back 40 minutes later. Marginal improvement. Not enough to celebrate, but not nothing either. "Progress," Sarah said. "Tiny, microscopic progress." "I'll take it." They worked until 3 a.m. When Mara finally made it back to her apartment, she was too wired to sleep. Her mind kept running through molecular structures, binding cascades, all the variables that needed to align perfectly for this to work. Her phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. "Saw the lab lights on until late. You're going to burn out at this pace." "Can't burn out. Too much to do." That's literally what everyone says before they burn out. "Take a day off this weekend." Doctor's orders. "You're not a doctor." "Fine. Billionaire's strong suggestion. Same thing." Mara smiled despite her exhaustion. "Maybe. We'll see." But she didn't take the weekend off. Neither did Sarah or Lynn. They were too close to something, too caught up in the momentum of the work. By month 3, they had a modified structure that looked promising. Eliminated most of the neural binding without completely destroying the therapeutic effect. "We need to test it," Lynn said. "In vitro first, then animal models." Agreed. But we do it right. Full safety protocols, triple-check methodology. Everything documented. "You sound paranoid." "I am paranoid. Sloan taught me that." The in vitro test took another 2 months. The results were encouraging. The modified compound still targeted cancer cells effectively. And the neural accumulation was reduced by 80%. Not eliminated. Reduced. 80% isn't good enough, Mara said. "We need 100. Zero accumulation. Zero risk." "That might not be possible," Sarah countered. "Every drug has side effects. Every treatment has risks. The question is whether the benefit outweighs them." "Not for this. Not after what happened before." "So what do you want to do? Scrap 3 months of work and start over?" "If that's what it takes." They argued for an hour. Sarah thought Mara was being too cautious. Mara thought Sarah was being too optimistic. Lynn played mediator, pointing out valid concerns on both sides. Finally, they compromised. They'd continue testing the current version while simultaneously exploring alternative approaches. Parallel tracks. Hedging their bets. This is why research takes forever, Sarah muttered. Because we're trying to be perfect instead of just good enough. Good enough killed 5 kids, Mara said quietly. I'm not settling for good enough ever again. That shut the argument down. 6 months in, Ethan brought Lily to visit the lab. She was exactly as advertised, intense, curious, armed with questions that required actual thought to answer. So you're making medicine for sick kids? Lily asked, peering at a microscope like it might hold the secrets of the universe. We're trying to, Mara said. It's complicated. My dad said you're very smart, that you stopped a bad person from making medicine that hurt people. Mara glanced at Ethan, who shrugged apologetically. She asked. I gave her the age-appropriate version. Are there a lot of bad people in science? Lily asked. No, most scientists are good. They want to help. But sometimes people make mistakes. Or they care more about being successful than being careful. And you don't do that? I try not to. I try really hard not to. Lily nodded seriously. That's good. Because when I'm a scientist, I want to be careful too. I want to help the ocean without hurting the fish. That's exactly the right attitude. After they left, Sarah came over to where Mara was standing. That kid's going to change the world someday, Sarah said. Yeah, I think you're right. Her dad's not bad either. For a billionaire. Mara raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? Just that I've been watching you two, the way he looks at you, the way you light up when he walks in. We're colleagues, friends. Sure, keep telling yourself that. Sarah, I'm just saying, you're allowed to be happy, you know. You saved the day, got the guy to fund your dream lab. You're allowed to also get the guy. It's not like that. Okay, but if it ever becomes like that, don't sabotage it because you think you don't deserve good things. You do. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she went back to work, which was what she always did when emotions got complicated. By month 9, they had a breakthrough, a modified binding mechanism that eliminated neural accumulation entirely while actually improving the therapeutic efficacy. Run it again, Mara said, staring at the data. Make sure we didn't make a mistake. Sarah ran the simulation 3 more times. Same results. It works, Sarah said. Mara, it actually works. In simulation, we still need, I know, animal models, clinical trials, years of testing. But this is the proof of concept. This is what we've been killing ourselves for. Mara allowed herself a moment of hope. Just a moment. Okay, yeah, this is good. This is really good. They called Ethan. He showed up 30 minutes later with champagne. We're not celebrating yet, Mara protested. This is just the first step. Every journey starts with a first step. We're celebrating the step. He poured 3 glasses. To the team, to good science, to actually giving a damn. They drank. And for the first time in months, Mara let herself believe this might actually work. The animal trials started in month 12. Mice first, then rats, then primates. Each stage took longer than the last. Each required meticulous documentation, triple-checked safety protocols. Everything Sloan should have done and didn't. The results were consistently positive. The treatment worked. The cancer cells died. And there was no neural accumulation, no toxicity, no hidden dangers lurking in the data. We're ready for FDA approval to begin phase 1 trials, Lynn said 2 years into the project. All our safety data is solid. The efficacy is there. We've done everything right. Everything we know to do right, Mara corrected. There could still be things we missed. There are always things you could miss. But at some point, you have to trust the process, trust the data. Do I? Lynn looked at her seriously. Yes. Because if you don't, you'll never move forward. You'll spend your whole life checking and rechecking, and the people who need this treatment will die waiting for perfect. It was a hard truth. One Mara had been avoiding. Okay, she said finally, let's file for approval. The FDA process took another 8 months. Reviews, questions, requests for additional data. It was exhausting and bureaucratic and exactly as it should be. When the approval came through, Mara stared at the letter for a long time. We can start phase 1 trials, she said to her team. Human trials. Are you ready for that? Sarah asked gently. No, but I don't think I ever will be, so we might as well start. They recruited carefully. Adults only for phase 1. People with late-stage cancers who'd exhausted other options. People who understood the risks and chose to take them anyway. The first patient was a woman named Patricia, 53, pancreatic cancer, months to live without intervention. You understand this is experimental, Mara told her before the first dose. We believe it's safe. We've done everything we can to make sure it's safe, but there are no guarantees. Patricia smiled. Honey, I'm dying anyway. If this works, great. If it doesn't, at least I tried something. That's all any of us can do. They administered the first dose. Mara watched the monitors like a hawk, checking vitals, looking for any sign of adverse reaction. Nothing. Patricia tolerated it well, went home that afternoon feeling fine. The second dose, the third, still nothing but positive results. By the fourth dose, the point where Sloane's version had started causing problems, Mara barely slept. She kept checking her phone, waiting for bad news that never came. Patricia completed the full treatment cycle, 6 doses over 8 weeks. Her scans at the end showed significant tumor reduction, no neurological symptoms, no seizures, no cognitive decline, just a woman getting better. It works, Patricia said at her final checkup. You actually did it. Mara's eyes filled with tears. You did it. You trusted us. Thank you. Are you kidding? Thank you. You gave me more time with my grandkids. That's everything. Phase 1 expanded to 20 patients, then 50. Every success felt like a small miracle. Every clean safety report felt like vindication. But Mara never let herself get comfortable. Never stopped checking. Never stopped questioning. You're going to drive yourself crazy, Ethan said one night. They were having dinner at that same Italian place in the village. It had become a tradition. Every few months, they'd decompress together, talk about things that weren't work. Except tonight, Mara couldn't stop talking about work. The Phase 2 protocols need to be airtight, she was saying. We need larger sample sizes, longer observation periods, more diverse patient populations. Mara. And we should probably add an independent safety board, people with no connection to the company who can review the data objectively. Mara. What? Stop. Just for one night. Stop being the director of research and just be a person having dinner. She set down her fork. I don't know how to do that anymore. Sure you do. Tell me something that's not about work. Anything. A book you read, a movie you saw, something that made you laugh. Mara thought about it. Realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd done something just for fun. The last 2 years had been nothing but work. That's sad, she said. Yeah, it kind of is. Ethan reached across the table, took her hand. You saved the world. You can take a night off. His hand was warm, solid. Mara realized Sarah had been right. Somewhere along the way, this had become more than friendship, more than professional respect. I'm scared, she said quietly, of what happens if I stop paying attention, if I let my guard down. You're scared you'll become Sloane. Yeah. You won't. You know how I know? Because Sloane never questioned himself, never worried about doing the right thing. He was so sure he was brilliant that he stopped checking his work. You question everything, sometimes too much, but that's what makes you different. What if it's not enough? It is enough. You are enough. He squeezed her hand. And you're allowed to have a life outside the lab. You're allowed to be happy. Sarah said the same thing. Sarah's smart. You should listen to her. They finished dinner, walked through the village like they always did, but this time, when they reached Mara's building, Ethan didn't immediately say goodbye. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. If I asked you to dinner, not as colleagues, not as friends, as an actual date, what would you say? Mara's heart jumped. I'd say we should probably keep things professional, that mixing personal and professional is complicated. That's what you'd say, not what you want to say. No, it's not what I want to say. So what do you want to say? She looked at him. This man who'd believed her when no one else would, who'd fought for her, funded her dreams, become someone she couldn't imagine not having in her life. I'd say yes. I'd say I'd like that very much. Ethan smiled. Good, because I already made reservations for Saturday. Somewhere nice, not Italian. Presumptuous. Hopeful. There's a difference. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious that might break. When he pulled back, Mara was smiling. Saturday then, she said. Saturday. Phase 2 trials launched 6 months later. Larger patient population, longer observation period. Everything Mara had wanted and more. The results continued to be positive. Tumor reduction rates above 80%, minimal side effects, no neural accumulation, no hidden toxicities. It was working, actually working. Emma's mother called one day, out of the blue. "Dr. Ellis? I don't know if you remember me." "Of course I remember you, Mrs. Parker. How's Emma?" "She's good. Better. The new medication is helping with the seizures, but I was calling because I heard about your trials. The new treatment. We're in phase 2. It's going well. Do you think, could it help Emma? I know her cancer's in remission, but the damage from before, it's a cancer treatment, not a neurological repair. I'm sorry. It won't fix what happened." Silence on the other end, then, "Okay, I understand. I just had to ask." "Mrs. Parker, how is Emma doing? Really?" "She's dancing again, not professionally, just in our living room when she thinks no one's watching. It makes her happy, and that's enough." After they hung up, Mara sat at her desk and cried. For Emma. For all the things that couldn't be fixed, for all the damage that was permanent, but also for the fact that Emma was dancing, even if it was just in her living room, even if it wasn't perfect. It was something, and sometimes something was everything. Sarah found her 20 minutes later, still red-eyed. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking about why we do this. To help people. To help the people we can help, and live with the fact that we can't help everyone. That's life, Mara. We do our best. We try our hardest, and we accept that our best isn't always enough." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just never listened before." Phase 3 trials started 3 years after Mara took the job. Multi-center, international, hundreds of patients across dozens of hospitals. It was massive, expensive, and absolutely necessary. The data collection alone was overwhelming. Mara hired additional staff, brought in consultants, created systems to track every single data point, and she checked everything, every report, every safety flag, every anomaly. "You need to delegate," Lynn told her. "You can't personally review every piece of data from 300 patients. Watch me." That's not sustainable. Neither is another Sloan situation. "Mara, you're not him. This team isn't BioSure. We have checks and balances, independent review boards. You built a system that works. Trust it." It was hard, trusting, letting go. But Lynn was right. Mara started delegating. Slowly, reluctantly, learning to trust her team the way Ethan had trusted her. The phase 3 results came in after 18 months. The data was overwhelming, positive across every metric, efficacy rates above anything currently on the market, safety profile better than most established treatments. "We did it," Sarah said, looking at the final analysis. "We actually did it. We need to submit to the FDA for approval. Already drafted the application, just needs your signature." Mara read through the entire submission. 300 pages of data, documentation, safety reports, everything proving this treatment worked and was safe. She signed it, watched Sarah file it electronically, and then she sat back and waited. The FDA approval process took another year. More questions, more data requests, more reviews. But finally, the letter came. Full approval for use in adult patients with specific cancer types. The first new treatment in its class in over a decade. The press coverage was immediate. Headlines about the miracle cure, the researcher who'd been vindicated, the billionaire who'd funded hope. But Mara avoided most of it. She'd learned her lesson about media attention. Instead, she focused on what mattered, getting the treatment to patients who needed it, making sure it was administered correctly, monitoring for any long-term effects they might have missed. A year after approval, she got a letter from Patricia, the first phase 1 patient. "Dr. Ellis, I wanted you to know, I'm cancer-free, 2 years in remission. My doctors are calling it a miracle. I'm calling it good science. Thank you for giving me time. Thank you for caring enough to do it right. Patricia." Mara put the letter on her office wall, next to her degrees, next to the photo of the team on the day they got FDA approval. Reminders of what mattered, of why she'd fought so hard. Emma came to visit the lab on a spring afternoon. She was 11 now, taller. Her seizures controlled enough that she could live a relatively normal life. "I wanted to see where you work," Emma said shyly. My mom said you're the one who stopped the bad medicine. I helped. A lot of people helped. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you wish you could fix what happened to me? The seizures and stuff? Mara knelt down to Emma's level. Every single day, I'm so sorry we didn't stop it sooner. It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but I'm okay. I'm learning to live with it. And my mom says what you did, stopping the medicine, that helped other kids. So that's good. It is good, but I wish we'd helped you too. You did help me, just not the way you wanted to. Emma smiled. I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. Help kids like me. That's because of you, because you showed me that one person can make things better. After Emma left, Mara sat in her office and thought about what the girl had said, about how help doesn't always look the way you expect, how you can't save everyone, but you can inspire someone to save others. That night, she had dinner with Ethan at their usual place. They'd been dating for 2 years now, taking it slow, figuring out how to balance work and relationship and all the complications that came with both. Lily asked when you're coming over for dinner again, Ethan said. She wants to show you her new marine biology project. Tell her this weekend. I'd love to see it. She also asked if you're going to be around permanently. Her exact words. What did you tell her? That it's complicated, that grown-ups sometimes take time figuring things out. That's very diplomatic. I'm a businessman. Diplomacy's my specialty. He paused. But for what it's worth, I hope you are around permanently, both professionally and personally. The research division isn't going anywhere. I'm contracted for at least 5 more years. I wasn't talking about the research division, Mara smiled. I know. And for what it's worth, I hope I'm around permanently too. They finished dinner and walked through the village. It was their routine now, their way of decompressing, of being normal people instead of a billionaire and a director of research. Do you ever think about the Carlisle? Ethan asked. That day you stopped me from signing? Sometimes. Usually when I'm having trouble sleeping. Regrets? About speaking up? No. About how long it took to make things right every day. You can't control the past, only the future. I know. Doesn't make it easier. They reached Mara's building. Ethan walked her to the door like he always did. Thank you, Mara said. For what? For believing me. For fighting for me. For giving me the chance to do the work right. Thank you for being worth believing in. He kissed her goodnight. See you tomorrow? See you tomorrow. Mara went upstairs to her apartment. It was bigger now, nicer. She could afford nice things with her salary, but it was still modest, still her. She made tea and sat by the window, looking out at the city, thinking about the journey from waitress to director, from silence to voice, from victim to victor, though she wasn't sure she liked that framing. It was more complicated than that. She thought about Sloan, still in prison, still appealing, still insisting he'd done nothing wrong. Some people never learned, never changed, never accepted responsibility. But that wasn't her problem anymore. She'd done what she could, stopped him, prevented future harm, built something better. That was all anyone could do. Try to make the world slightly better than they found it, even if the improvement was small, even if it was imperfect. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Just got word. The treatment's being approved for pediatric use. Goes into effect next month. We did it, boss. We actually saved some kids. Mara stared at the message. Read it 3 times to make sure it was real. Pediatric approval. The thing she'd been working toward for 4 years. The reason she'd fought so hard to make the treatment safe. Kids like Lily would have access now. Kids like Emma would never have to go through what she went through. It wasn't a perfect ending. Emma still had seizures. Marcus still struggled. The past couldn't be undone, but the future could be different, and that mattered. Mara texted back, Yukol, we saved some kids, and tomorrow we'll try to save some more. That's the job. That's the job, Sarah agreed. See you in the lab. Mara set down her phone and finished her tea. Tomorrow, there would be more work, more research, more challenges. But tonight, she'd allow herself to feel proud, to acknowledge that she'd taken a broken thing and made it better, taken a dangerous formula and redesigned it into something that actually helped. She'd lost 3 years to fear and silence, but she'd spent the last 4 years building something that mattered, And if she had to choose, knowing what she knew now, understanding the cost, she'd make the same choice again. She'd stand up in that restaurant. She'd whisper those words. She'd risk everything for the truth. Because some things were worth the cost. Some fights were worth having. Some voices were worth raising, even when the world tried to silence them. Mara looked at her reflection in the window, saw the waitress she'd been, saw the director she'd become, saw all the versions of herself in between. And she thought about Emma's words, about how one person can make things better. It wasn't about being perfect, wasn't about saving everyone, wasn't about grand gestures or miracle cures. It was about doing the next right thing, and then the next, and the next. Building something better, one small decision at a time. That was the real victory. Not the trial verdict, not the FDA approval, not the headlines or the vindication. Just the quiet knowledge that she'd tried, that she'd cared, that when it mattered most, she'd chosen truth over safety. And somewhere out there, kids were getting treatment that actually worked. Families were keeping hope without risking harm. The system was slightly better because she'd refused to stay silent. That had to be enough. It was enough. Mara finished her tea and went to bed. Tomorrow she'd go back to the lab, back to the work, back to trying to make impossible things possible. But tonight, for the first time in years, she slept without fear, without doubt, without the weight of unspoken truths, just the quiet peace of knowing she'd done everything she could. And that sometimes, if you were very lucky and very stubborn, everything you could was actually enough. The story that started with a whisper ended with a breath. Not dramatic, not earth-shattering, just a woman choosing to speak up, and a world that became slightly better because she did. And in the end, that was the only story that mattered.